Oh, you know you love that sound.
Unfortunately, we couldn't afford John Tesh to play that.
Oh my God.
To start this out.
We just listened to that song to get us amped up for this.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a generational thing. Certain theme songs when sporting events used to come on, Monday Night Football, Hank Williams singing that and everything. But when you hear certain themes, come on, you know exactly what it is. And that to me said NBA for my entire childhood.
Yeah, and it's because the NBA was on NBC, and that's where it was given. This whole episode harkens back to a time when the NBA was not necessarily something new, but it was when star power almost reached its peak.
Yeah.
And nowadays we have a lot of different stars. There's a lot more parity in the NBA. But, I mean, you tuned in every Sunday and heard that theme song to watch Michael Jordan play.
I came in on the heels of Bird Magic, and that led right into that entire segment of basically the roster of the Dream Team.
Yeah. Today, Chris and I are focused on just knocking out the history of basketball and then into the NBA. We could have thrown college in there. That would have been another 2 to 3 hours. That could be a whole episode in and of itself.
It's just like football. There's just one doesn't happen without the other.
Yeah, but for a very long time, college basketball was just where everything was. And I mean, shit, we have a whole entire month of March Madness, basically, that is just dedicated to the tournament for the NCAA. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the beginnings of it. But I don't want to say that they're two different sports, but it's almost like they compete against each other. Yeah. And while you get sort of more of the wholesomeness of college basketball and the stories, you get more of a polished product in the NBA.
I was going to say, I don't feel like two other sports compete within the same sport, has competition like that. There are schools of thought, like there are college football people, and then there are pro football people. But I feel like when someone says football, I don't think of college football.
No.
I just think of pro football. For the longest time, the NBA was so far behind that if someone said basketball, you were just thinking like, oh, which college team are you guys talking about?
And you also have the other stuff that we're going to talk about hardships and coming out. For a very long time, you had to play 4 years of NCAA basketball to get in to be able to be drafted to the NBA.
Yeah.
So you have like a system built up to where you know you're going to have these stars that could potentially go straight from high school into the NBA. They have to be there for 4 years kind of honing their craft, but also growing the game of college basketball.
How many stars do you think we missed out on because they played and got injured in college and were never able to like play to that level again?
We'll talk about a big one, the biggest what if ever, Len Bias.
Yeah.
Len Bias was an incredibly just tragic story that Len Bias was compared to being basically like a Jordan type figure. He was bigger, he was stronger, but goddamn, he was good.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to get into it. Remember, wherever you listen to your podcast, rate us as high as you can. Keep sending the feedback and everything. Numbers are growing, which is amazing. We're reaching new people. And it also means that all of you guys listening are usually sticking around and listening to us every week. So we really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Check us out on YouTube. We have that page up. No video yet. That's a future endeavor, but it's good.
We say
to
this
get those
most of the time
numbers
to
up.
try to remind ourselves that it's also going to be happening.
Yep, exactly.
All right, guys. Well, without further ado, let's get into the NBA. One man. This can be traced back to one man. Unlike, I don't think any other sport has its set date like this, right?
No, the hardest part about it is everything kind of evolved. Football, I guess, evolved from football. It evolved from kind of soccer.
Well, it was more so, God, we did an episode on the NFL, and it just essentially became, it was almost like a rugby.
Yeah, it was soccer and rugby
everything.
together.
It was that, but it evolved at different stages. People brought their own rules in, and then you had to go play. It's like fucking beer pong. You had to go play house rules over there.
Yeah, and I'm sure when we do the baseball episode, it's going to be derived from stickball, cricket, anything along those lines.
Yeah.
Hockey's that one's a tough one. Hockey, I think, probably had to be.
Well, you have so many sports that just require, like, of course, the reason why soccer is the largest sport in the world is because it's the simplest to play.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to basketball, I mean, if you can just put a basket up on a stick or a pole, you can do basketball, which is why basketball catches like fucking fire all over the world. Baseball, yeah, it's a stick and you're throwing something at it, but it still does require a little bit more equipment if you're going to do that. And then hockey, you're just like, you got to have shit that you got to have razor blades strapped to your feet.
You got to be able to move on ice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's sort of why we have a more concrete idea of basketball is there's really nothing else that it could have evolved from. There's ancient sports. There's things that the Aztecs and the Mayans played.
Pock, or something like that. It was the one where you had to hit it with your hip and try to get it through the vertical.
Yeah.
And then if you lost, you died.
And yeah, it's almost like Quidditch evolved from that and basketball together and another sport that involves brooms. I don't know what it would be. Maybe
curling.
Curling.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got brooms there. But we owe the invention of the game of basketball to a Canadian. So thank you, Canada, for basketball. Thank you for producing James Naismith. He was born, this date throws me off, November 6, 1861. So we have another guy that was born pre-Civil War, but Ontario, Canada wasn't a part of the Civil War. Yeah. So I'm sure he was up there and he was looking down and he's like, ooh, I wonder when they're going to cool off and maybe I can come down there and do some things. He studied physical education at McGill University in Montreal. McGill also famous from our magician episode.
Houdini?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's where Houdini ended up getting the famous punch to the gut that killed him, was up at McGill University. Sure. He ends up leaving in 1890 to come down to Springfield, Massachusetts to teach at the YMCA International Training School, which I had no idea that was a thing, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But something I thought that was kind of interesting was he studies physical education, born in 1861, comes down in 1890. So he was 29 years old by the time he got done.
You had to wait for shit to cool off and give it a few more years for shit to pop off again. Also, little fact, YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association.
I had no idea.
Well, and in the song makes so much more sense now. Young man, there's no need to feel down. It was basically inviting him to the YMCA to stay there because he was a young man.
It was Village People?
Yeah.
That's why that song felt a little
People didn't know
troubling.
about it right away. They just assumed that they were wholesome dudes singing about being in the Navy and promoting the Young Men's Christian Association, bringing more visibility to it than it's ever had.
The Christian Fellowship listened to the song the first time, like, hey, somebody wrote a song about our organization. They turn it on, they listen to it, they're like, God, this is great. What do these guys look like? And then they see how they're dressed, like, fuck.
Just hard working, a cop, a construction worker, a sailor, a biker.
Native American.
There was another one in there too.
Oh, cop?
I think I said that.
Just a vast grouping. When he gets down to the YMCA International Training School, he becomes a full-time faculty member after going through the program that he went towards. He was tasked with inventing a winter sport. He had 14 days to create this wintertime activity that would provide an athletic distraction because we have hockey, which is mostly played outside at this point in time because it's not like you're building arenas that have full-on...
It's ponds.
Yeah. So you got to do it inside. You also are on the heels of kind of the, not invention of football, but kind of football blowing up.
So you still do have that being done up until that point. And then at that point, they're not going to keep maintaining the field for all these other sports, but they have to have a way of keeping also some of these athletes in shape.
Yeah.
Giving them something to do.
As soon as the wintertime happens, you're not out playing lacrosse and football. You still have to keep up that athletic prowess so you're ready to come around when the the warm comes back.
So the YMCA International Training School, it's now Springfield College today, correct?
Yeah.
You got to like drive onto the campus and it's like basketball motherfuckers. Like right there.
This
right?
is us.
Yeah.
That's us.
You're welcome.
Because aren't the Simpsons, it's just general Springfield, right? Because it's like Springfield was the most general name in every state. Everybody has like a Springfield.
I was going to say, I think everybody has a Springfield, yeah.
Because they never ever...
Every state has a Meridian, I think.
Yeah, they never like said specifically what state they were in. I don't think they were in Massachusetts, just based upon what I think that dirty accent would be.
I think what ended up happening is when other Springfield universities would be like, why do they get it? They're like, because they fucking invented basketball.
Yeah, what'd you guys invent? Mm-hmm. So yeah, Springfield College, and he has to come up with this athletic distraction. He has to figure out a good way to try to use what he has at his disposal.
Which is very little.
Yeah, and kind of the idea was he had to kind of check these boxes. It had to take up a small space. It had to just take up the gymnasium. It couldn't involve the elevated track that was above this gymnasium. It had to be a team activity because, again, you're trying to preach team sports, make sure that everybody's working together, teamwork, communication, things like that. That it was fair for all players. So it couldn't be like you got to be 6'5" to play this, or you have to be, super athletic. And I will say, I don't remember if I homered the NFL episode and said that football is my favorite sport. Basketball has always been my favorite sport. And I feel like I can say that basketball, you probably have to have the most cardio for.
I feel like basketball has such a culture around it that isn't in actually itself basketball.
Yeah.
That there's so much more for people. There's football, if you want to dress, like a fucking football player, you wear, and not a lot of people are going to wear football jersey. I mean, people do now, but they still look kind of fucking goofy.
Yeah.
But you can go and just wear the shoes that your basketball player is wearing and then wear whatever else the fuck you want. Like there's such a more developed culture of things outside of basketball that kind of surround that sport than any other sport, I think. Definitely, like, there's no baseball culture in regards to, like, any type of, like, fashion or things like that.
Hey, you got jerseys, but beyond that, it's cleats. Like, you can't wear cleats out in public.
That's also what it is, too, yeah.
But, I mean, I think people kind of generally accept that soccer players are usually the most in shape, and I get it because of the size of the field. I think a basketball court's only 96 feet long. But at the same time, in soccer, you really are running like from the goal to the midline or from the midline. Like defense, you don't play the whole field, do you?
You're also sometimes far enough away from the action when you could be playing, if you're on defense and you're playing, the right defender.
Yeah.
And all the action is going on the left side of the field, further up the field. You just get that time. You're still moving, you're watching your man and everything, but you're not spiking your cardio like you are in basketball where, I think what happens and where it gets kind of lost is when you're watching professional basketball, in addition to the fact that everyone's relatively the same size, so you don't even appreciate how freakishly large these guys are, which then makes you think about like, these guys are moving like 250 like pound frames.
Yeah.
Just gliding down the court and jumping and landing and all this kind of shit.
While dribbling a ball, while watching your footwork.
Yep. But all eyes are on the guy dribbling. You're not watching all of the constant. You're watching where he's kind of watching, and you're not seeing the constant movement. No one gets to stand still and rest.
Yeah. And if you don't get back on defense and you give them an advantage, you're going to lose your spot pretty quick. But that was kind of the idea, was it has to be fair for everybody. It has to be a team activity. The main thing was that it just can't be too rough. Because you can tackle somebody on a field and usually both of you get up. You tackle somebody on a wooden floor, I'm sure at this point it might have been, it was probably wood for them. It's going to hurt a lot more. So he takes a look at kind of normal team sports and he's like, well, a smaller ball usually means that there has to be more equipment used. A baseball, you're going to need a glove.
Yeah.
Tennis, you're going to need a racket. I don't have any of that stuff at my disposal. So if I make the ball bigger, then they can just use their hands. There's no specialty equipment really involved. He looks at kind of the team aspect of it, and it's like, well, we only have so much space, but at the same time, if I just make sure that nobody moves, we don't have to have a ton of space. Also, if nobody is moving with the ball and they're just being thrown back and forth to each other, then nobody can like get ahead of steam and try to tackle somebody.
Yes, yeah. There's not constant movement around the ball itself because the ball is stationary.
Yeah.
There's movement going on around it, but no one's trying to knock the ball away from somebody else because they're not moving with it.
The other thing too is, somebody getting hit with the ball as it's being thrown into a goal or anything like that. If you can elevate the goal above everybody else and they're just throwing that ball into the goal, then there's a lot more safety involved.
If I put the goal down low, they're going to dive and trying to like knock it out.
Yep.
I need to put it in the safest place, which is up higher.
And there's no chance in hell that anybody's ever going to be good enough to be able to jump and throw the ball through the hoop and grab the hoop.
It's going to be a low scoring.
It'll just never happen. Naismith used his Canadian upbringing to come up with an idea based on a game that him and his friends called Duck on a Rock, where I guess they would set a duck on a rock and then throw rocks up at it to try to knock the duck off the rock. I don't know.
Obviously.
But yeah, throw, shot, whatever.
One of your classic Canadian games.
Yeah, let's just go play some Duck on a Rock. So that was kind of his outline, was need a big ball, probably going to use a soccer ball, gonna need some goals. He goes to the janitor. He's like, hey, man, I need 2 18-inch square crates. Do you have anything like that? He comes back. He's like, no crates. I have 2 peach baskets, though.
I like to imagine it was more like, oh, no crates. Got these peach baskets? It's like, fuck it, fine.
They got bottoms in them? Yeah, good. That's perfect. We won't need the ball to actually fall down through. Let's keep the bottom in them.
Oh, that would cause fights. Keep that thing
if the ball
elevated
drops, everybody
yeah.
goes for it. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. He has this track that's all the way surrounding this kind of gymnasium. He hangs these peach baskets on the bottom rail of the gymnasium, or on the bottom rail of the track.
So you have the gym, and then basically in close enough to where like it's not bleachers and shit like that.
Yeah,
that's where essentially the ledges for the track are. And then he's just zip tying the shit to the fucking railing.
Yeah, it still blows me away that through all of the ways that basketball's evolved and changed, he hung these things from a railing that was 10 feet off the ground, and then just for all eternity, we're just like, yep, 10 feet. 10 feet works. This is good. Not 12. 12 makes it a little difficult. 8 makes it too easy. We're not going to use an odd number. Let's just go 10.
It's weird that he had to pick that because that's where the sill was. It had to definitely determine that.
Yeah.
But the fact that I think if they had to have done, because they made rules changes and everything, at some point, in the same way that they've done things to improve scoring, to make the game more fast-paced and entertaining to watch, they had to have entertained the idea of being like, if we lower these, there's going to be more of this and this and this, and it could be crazier. But then it's also going to lead to an emphasis on this, which will have, we can make it higher. Well, that's going to be reduced. You're not going to have dunks. You're not going to have, as high of score.
No.
It just so happens that maybe 10 just fell into that optimal position where it never needed to be changed.
It's absolutely perfect. You can still dunk on it. You can still shoot from long range.
Well, some of us can.
I haven't been able to do it for a very long time, and I wasn't even good at it when it happened. Embarrassing for a 6'6" guy. But he designs kind of these 13 rudimentary rules, and you can pull them up. We're not going to read them all. They just all kind of suck.
It gives you, I'm going to read the ones that are so far from modern basketball.
Yeah.
So, this one, obviously. The ball may be thrown in any direction with one or both hands. You could bat the ball, I guess, so don't do that anymore. Can't run with the ball, so think a la Ultimate Frisbee.
Yep.
You can run until you actually take possession of the ball. Your momentum could carry you for an allowed amount of steps, but you weren't allowed to move once you had the ball. So then you were trying to move it or, pass it to somebody else in motion. It had to be held in your hands, so not between your knees or your armpits, which I get because in rugby you're tucking it against your body and like trying to keep it to where it's not being stripped from you.
Well, and if you think about it too, if you tuck that ball anywhere close to your body and somebody's trying to steal it and slap away, they're probably going to smack you in the face.
That's where we come to number 6, man. A foul is striking the ball with a fist, which means, because these rules weren't essentially invented until after this first go-round.
Yeah.
That he's watching this, and just like in football, they're coming and they're just trying to punch the shit out of the ball to get it out of these people's possession. And then goes on to kind of describe what counts as a goal, getting it all off in the fucking peach basket, when it should be passed, when it goes out of bounds, and then establishes that the time is going to be 15-minute halves. So obviously that's been changed to 15-minute quarters, and in college basketball, 20-minute halves.
2 20-minute halves.
2 20-minute halves.
And it's at the same time, there's a whole section of like, if you have 3 fouls in the same possession, then the team's awarded a point. Anybody who commits a foul during the possession will have to sit out an entire possession until the ball goes through or there's a change.
Did you see a picture of the gym? Like the first setup?
Yeah.
So the way it's set up is he mounted it pretty much like above a door, but it's also one of those, older buildings that used to be able to try to let light into interior rooms. So they had the big windows. The peach basket is right in the middle of these big ass windows. How long did it take before someone, because you could throw it one-handed, is just trying to chuck it into the basket
through the window?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was also when glass was 1/4 of an inch thick, so.
And I imagine there was some relief where the track was up there too. But it's just, it all seems so kind of nuts. Every possession was started with a jump ball was another rule. So like we still keep the jump ball to start a game, but other than that, it changes at half just based on possession. First game that starts out 9-on-9. 9-on-9 on a court that's like literally almost like a half court. It's like 2/3 of a court of what an NBA court is.
Because a gym was never determined. The reason gyms are the size they are is because it's the place where a basketball court is supposed to be. This was at a time when a gym was just some place to come in and maybe do some like fucking calisthenics. So it was just a smaller area that happened to be, wood floored. And that's just weird to think about, that the reason we know what the size of a gym is because it's completely related to basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the number one thing to do indoors. But yeah, 9-on-9, it was just he literally split his class in half, so there was 18 people. And this first game was brutal.
The whistle blows and it doesn't become basketball, it becomes murder ball.
Yeah, guys left with dislocated shoulders, broken fingers, broken noses. It was just really, really rough. All for the game to end up in a 1-0 score. Yep.
That tells you how fucking rough it must have been. And you'd think he's like, fuck, no, I can't do this. Like, I'm supposed to be just keeping you guys in shape for the winter months. We can't do this again. Okay, I'm going to make some rules.
Well, if you think about it too, like, how foreign would that be to shoot something into a basket that high?
Yeah.
There's no, like, you could probably get some shots up before the game, but you've never really done that motion. Mm-hmm. There's a certain specific way that you shoot a basketball correctly.
But there is now, because that's been optimized in what position. Before then, it's just them either probably trying to go, 2 on the side of the ball and toss it up like that, or just chucking it up one-handed the entire time.
Granny style is probably an option.
You're not getting the ball down low like that. Not in this first game. But the people that played were like, no, let us play again. And part of that was also like the team that lost is like, we're going to get these motherfuckers back.
Yeah.
And
somebody knocked my tooth out.
Yeah. So he's like, on the condition that I'm going to make these rules so we don't have a repeat of the 3 serious injuries that occurred.
But it's a hit. The kids love it. And the kids take off for winter break. And as they go back home to their local Ys, they're telling everybody, hey, we played this game at school and it is awesome. And so word starts to get spread all around everybody that went to Springfield that attended that class, everybody that was just going to this college that got to see it and hear about it on campus that came and, snuck in and watched these classes.
Did you hear about the weird fucking sport game that these guys were playing in the gym?
Yeah.
They were just beating the shit out of each other.
And then they were throwing a ball in a basket. Mm-hmm. It makes no sense.
I couldn't figure out what the point of the game was till someone actually made it into the basket.
It was provocative, though. The first public game took place March 12th, 1892. Over 200 people attended this game. So it was definitely an oddity, but it was enough to bring the eyes in. This first game was student versus faculty. The students whooped their ass 5-1. It makes sense. The students have been playing this the whole entire time. The faculty's just kind of probably learning about this on their off day.
Yeah.
Typical. We did these games in high school. We did them in junior high. Student versus faculty game is
Chances
old
are,
as
though,
time.
maybe some of the faculty had actually played basketball before. Aware of it.
Yeah, they had it growing up. It wasn't a brand new sport for them.
Okay, this kind of blows my mind as well. So 2 years later, and we can go back, the first basketball is made by Spalding.
Mm-hmm.
So they got their start. I mean, I'm sure they made other balls, but they made the first basketball. And what it actually looked like, think of just the way a football has that stitching, except a basketball that's wrapped in leather with like that stitching on it.
Yeah.
But just like just a part of it, like on a football, like one strip of stitching. And that was the first basketball.
Just a giant round football.
Yep.
And I'm not sure when the actual transition went over to the grip patterns it's on basketballs now. If you see them, they have a webbing around them. There's usually some kind of texture to them. And it makes total sense. Shooting a basketball, if you can get your fingers correctly on the webbing, you're going to be able to get the backspin. So as soon as it hits the hoop, it's going to spin the right direction. Back then, it was just like a smooth leather ball that had an area where you could grip the laces, but that was pretty much
Which
it.
is crazy because that's probably what the goal was. It's just like a football. You're probably trying to get the laces so you can throw it and maybe get spin to it.
Same idea with the basketball back then. Prior to that, this blows me away to know that this is how fast these things get spread. Naismith ends up leaving his job. He goes down and he is the head coach at Kansas. I believe this was like 1898, maybe. He is the only coach in Kansas history to have a losing record. He had one season in everything that he coached that he had a record above 500. The guy that invented basketball is the only losing coach ever in the history of the University of Kansas. It's incredible how that works out. Also, this incredible too. The YMCA spread basketball so far all over the world that the first game that took place in France was in Paris in 1893.
Yeah.
So just so fast. Basketball spreads to China because they had YMCAs in China where they were playing these games.
It's not a new thing that it's international. And because of the flood of international stars coming in and everything, and especially with the Olympics, like you watched the Olympics and you're like, of course they're not good. They don't have basketball where they're from. Not the case. It may not be on the level that the NBA is, but basketball goes over even with World War I, because the YMCA, all these young soldiers going on, they're going to be involved in trying to find housing for them and stuff like that, where they're going to be staying in Britain. They're bringing basketballs with them. There's fucking peach baskets that they can pick up there and everything.
Yeah, you just need a ring.
Well, not even only that. Sorry, 1906. That's when the metal hoops, nets, and the backboards were invented. So they're sending also these things over, and you have all of these GIs with nothing to do that are picking up basketball and playing.
And then teaching everybody in that country.
Exactly. And all the countries that you're then traveling in, because there's areas that you're getting pulled back for R&R.
Yeah, and it's something that everybody can do. You can be good, you can be bad, but again, we're talking about a time when everything's a set shot. You're not jumping to shoot the ball ever. You're 2 feet on the ground and just kind of hucking it. So we're talking about the EuroLeague that's in Europe, the CBL, the China Basketball League. There are, I believe the NBA actually has an NBA Africa. There is the NBL in Australia. Good day. There's just these pro leagues now everywhere. It started because it got its popularity just coming over from war and through the Ys. Yeah. Like the spread of China gets so much bigger after Yao Ming gets drafted. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But there was already like an established footprint for them to have an understanding of what this game was. It blows me away to think that the YMCA had that far of a reach. Like they were just worldwide. We have 1898, the first iteration of the NBL, the National Basketball League, was founded with 6 teams. And I absolutely love old sports team names just because they're the goofiest things in the world. This was centered around Philadelphia. There were teams in New Jersey. There were the Clover Wheelmen.
Yeah, again, this is at a time when it's like the same way that football was like a regional thing, the same thing that pre-wrestling or wrestling had territories and things like that. You just have these areas where there's a higher population, so there's more people likely to come in and try to watch these things.
Yeah, the Clover Wheelmen, the Germantown Nationals. The Germantown Nationals just is funny to me. The Hancock Athletic Association didn't put a whole lot of work into that.
Some men's club.
Yep. In New Jersey, there was a Millville Glassblowers.
Of course, it was a company team.
Yeah, it was just...
Or like a fraternal order of glassblowers from the area.
The Camden Electrics. Probably everybody that worked for the electric company,
See,
right?
Now I'm seeing this in super stereotypical fashion when they all show up to the game, and as they're changing to actually play for the game, it's just guys like electricians coming in. They're all getting their electrician belts off and everything. And then you look over and it's the dudes wearing the overalls that have like soot on them because they're the glass blowers and they're getting changed and putting on their uniforms.
Basketball back then was just like a war of the trades.
It's the way that basketball does their teams.
Yeah.
Where they're just stereotypical uniforms. Yeah.
And we also have the Trenton Nationals. So again, Germantown Nationals, Trenton Nationals, not a lot of creativity.
You had to make sure to spell the name out.
They got a good 6-year run. 1904 is when that folds. The flashing back a little bit, first college game was Vanderbilt versus the local YMCA, which again,
it's a tune-up game.
In college football, this is why we have like Michigan versus St. Mary's Holy School. Like it's just
like, play shit, like they have a football program.
You play who is around, and that's just what they did.
The check games for those. They're like, listen, we know we're going to get destroyed, but we get to be on national TV. Maybe it bumps up our enrollment, our recruitment, and we're getting a big fat check to get our asses beat.
Yeah, then 1893. I don't know. It just the love of the game at that point.
Yeah.
You don't have another choice, so you play the local YMCA.
None of these other colleges have basketball teams. Have you called around the local Y?
That's February 7th, 1893. The first college-on-college game takes place between the prestigious Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota.
We're like 2 years in.
Yeah, but it spread that far to these colleges to where just like football spread and everybody wanted to play it and they loved it.
Football felt slower.
I think it was because it was almost more of like it happened on college campuses and then colleges took it, whereas this is just like college, like
it probably took more commitment from colleges to do football
than
it did this. Like, oh, we have a gym and we probably have a bunch of tall guys around campus.
Yeah, we can order a basketball. We got baskets. This game takes place, where is it? It's between Hamline University and St. Paul and Minnesota A&M before it becomes the University of Minnesota. The first 5-on-5 game, when we finally adapt the rules down to just 5 guys on the court at a time for each team, takes place between University of Chicago and Iowa. It's January 18th, 1896. So we already see where these rules are kind of starting to get to whittle down. We'll talk about a few kind of different game changers that happen later on.
I don't know if I didn't see this part. Do you know when the court size was established, if they had started to deviate away? Because I would imagine if they're playing in these gyms, then they have to have some type of set establishment for the dimensions. Even if they changed, there had to be. I didn't see that in the rules. Those 13 rules.
No, I think honestly that probably doesn't come into play until like the NCAA gets involved.
So you're playing like, in a way, kind of like the MLB has different depths to their ballparks and everything like that. Like,
they're not going to build a new basketball arena in 1893.
No, I get it. But what I'm thinking is like before this 9-on-9, before the 5-on-5 when it's 9-on-9, and you roll into someone who has a small gym.
Yeah. Everybody just understand the left-hand corner is off limits. The boiler's over there and it's really hot, but it's heating the building.
We got loose floorboards.
Yeah, there's just dead spots everywhere, but you're not dribbling it. And we'll talk about the invention of dribbling. By 1900, the game had spread to colleges all across the country. 1897, the Amateur Athletic Union kind of takes over from the YMCA. What's called AAU now, that's spread everywhere like a virus. 1909, the NCAA takes over from the AAU. 1904, basketball becomes a demonstration sport at the Olympics. It doesn't get into the Olympics until 1936 in Germany. That takes so long, 32 years, to go from a demonstration sport to a medaled sport.
I didn't look it up, but you got to imagine Germany fielded a basketball team during that Olympics, right?
They probably all look the same. Blonde hair, blue eyes.
And I'm sure that they were given pep talks by the Fuhrer at that point. And then to just get steamrolled because, oh yeah, in the first Olympics, the United States did win. It should have fucking won.
Yeah, we invented the game.
Yeah. But again, it was international enough at that point to where you can't make a sport an Olympic sport when one country is really the only one that does it.
Yeah.
Because then how long does it take how long did it take the goddamn Jamaican bobsled team to catch up to be as successful as all the other bobsled teams? You can't take a country-specific sport and then just expect everybody to start competing at the Olympics.
Oh, I forgot to write it down. FIBA becomes the international governing body. I think it's probably whatever FIFA stands for, except for instead of football, it's basketball.
International Basketball Association or something like that.
Yeah, it's just the International Basketball Association. So they kind of start to codify things as far as internationally before it gets into the Olympics. They still handle, like, they have the FIBA championships that I believe also happen every 4 years. There are like country tournaments in order to get into the massive FIBA tournament.
Is the FIBA tournaments when like how they'll do like the World Baseball Classic?
Yeah, and World Cup.
Okay.
It's all, there's qualifiers. The
international stars and everything like that.
Qualifiers. Everybody in the NBA goes back to their original countries and plays usually.
Basically, like we know not everyone's going to make the Olympic team, so we'll still let people play internationally.
Yeah, nowadays, FIBA is so much more interesting because it's such an international game and you have so many foreign-born players playing in the NBA. You have Luka going back to Slovenia and playing with a bunch of just Slovenian EuroLeague minor league teammates. But Luka's so good that he can carry them against other Olympic teams or other FIBA teams. Along with that, somehow it takes this long. And this wasn't just like a men's only sport. Women pretty much attached to this very quickly. It takes until 1976 for the Women's Olympics to get their debut. 1939 becomes the first NCAA tournament for the men. 1982 is the first NCAA tournament for the women. Nowadays, they're both just so on par with each other. I know the men's tournament always has a shine to it, and we're coming off of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese playing in the other, in the women's. But it's very, very exciting nowadays to just watch and tune them. And that's coming from an NBA guy. I watch college basketball from like conference championships to the end of March Madness.
Listen, nothing's going to drive interest like a tournament where you can bet a ton of money on it.
True.
Regardless of who's playing.
I want to say, I think I saw this the other day, their estimated total for wagers placed during the NCAA tournament, they ballparked it right around $3 billion.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's so much money.
Degenerates.
Yeah. In the 1920s, local leagues start springing up, just like we talked about with football. It's if there's 10 factories in town and 10 factories can field a team, they're going to start creating these little leagues. The other thing that happened was we have, just like in the Babe Ruth episode, which I think should be out by now, we have these teams that would just go barnstorming across the country. They would go on these tours through the Midwest, and they'd play in Des Moines, and they'd play.
It's fucking Andre the Giant, buddy.
Yeah.
It's these teams. It's putting on a show to show these people that have never had the opportunity to see something like this before, even if it's just traveling into town for the night.
Well, and at the same time, too, when they would enter these cities, occasionally they would bring other barnstorming teams and basically put on these exhibitions. But if they didn't do that, they would have to do this Blues Brothers style where they would have to go down to a Y, or they would have to go to a gym somewhere like that.
They'd have to find themselves 5 other dudes to play against that are like representing the town.
Exactly. So you're playing against these towns, but also at the same time, you know that you're depending on as many people coming to that game as possible, because you have to split. You know, is this going to be a 50-50 split?
Yeah.
Do we make it 60% for the winner, 40% for the loser? But after all of that and getting all that figured out, you have to realize that if you go out there and you're so much better than the local team, you have to try to keep that game close.
Yeah.
Because if it's just a blowout and everybody's bored, the next time you come into town, they're going to be like, fuck no, we don't want to play you guys.
Well, and if you don't want to keep it close, you have to draw their attention and keep them there in other ways.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the most famous version of them soon. We have to talk about the New York Celtics. How disrespectful does that have to feel for the Boston Celtics to know that they weren't the first Celtics?
Anywhere there's going to be an Irish, segment of the populace, they can just claim that.
But the New York Celtics were kind of like the first big main attraction. They traveled as far up and down the Eastern Seaboard just playing these games. And they're actually, I believe they were put into the NBA, the Basketball Hall of Fame, a fairly long time ago, just as far as these barnstorming teams go. You have the New York Renaissance. It was an all-black team from New York, and in these days...
I think it was also known as the Harlem Renaissance, too.
Were they the Harlem Renaissance as well?
I think the names were interchangeable.
Yeah. They weren't allowed to play in most of these leagues because these leagues were going to be segregated. But
just say it. They weren't going to play in these other leagues because they would fucking kick everyone's ass.
Yes, exactly. But when they were on these barnstorming tours, they would show up to these places where normally black people weren't treated very well, but it almost becomes more of like a challenge. I'm sure they had a lot of shit thrown at them, a lot of racial slurs thrown their way too.
If towns know they're coming into town, like forming up, like who's the best at basketball in the town? Like we got to beat these guys.
Sports are kind of a great equalizer in that way because it's a physical competition that you can prove who is better. And so if you want to try to beat them, you're just going to play harder.
I'm trying to envision the collection of people that were put in front of these guys in some of these towns. They were like, really?
This is going to be how are we going to keep this close?
Yeah.
Like, that guy's still wearing his overalls from the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're talking about a time, we'll get into them right directly after this, but we're talking about a time when these guys are playing in leather shoes with leather bottoms indoors. Like, you're going to be slipping and sliding. There's no grip. We aren't to the rubber shoe era quite yet. It's coming. It's around the corner. But you also have that.
What did that sound like? You know the sound of a gym in a basketball court now, the squeaks from the rubber hitting and everything like that. Like that is a very distinct sound.
One of the best top two sounds, that and a baseball bat.
Can you imagine? It just had to sound like just clapping, like with all of the leather soled shoes hitting and then just sliding back and forth repeatedly. Like just the weird fucking noise. It had to just be constant sound.
Yeah. It probably sounded like tap dancing.
Yeah.
But so top acts as a child. I mean, we didn't have Disney on Ice when we were kids.
We might have, but I mean, we didn't have Disney on Ice here.
No, definitely
Disney on
not
Ice
here.
was one of those like legends that you heard of from like cities that had hockey teams. Because that's the only reason you could have an ice rink.
Yeah, we didn't have a rink. That makes sense. That's why we didn't have it. But monster truck rallies, anything like that you just remember as a kid that was a big event that you could go to. The Harlem Globetrotters were my shit. I absolutely love these guys. We didn't get to go every single time they showed up.
Everybody had at one point or another the red, white, and blue ball.
Yeah. Well, that's ABA, but yes, it's...
No. There was ones that they had that were their ball, and it said Harlem Globetrotters on the ball.
Yeah, but as far as the coloration, I don't think they got that until maybe afterwards.
Oh, really? Okay.
But their whole styling, their whole just fun shtick, it was always like performance art to go see them play. And as a kid, it was the best thing ever because I loved basketball. And then you get all of the fun antics. Dude, the fake water bucket trick is the oldest trick in the book, but it's because they needed some funny relief. And they started out as a full-blown, legitimate barnstorming basketball team. The Harlem Globetrotters were formed in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago. They were formed as the Savoy Five originally, and they played in this place called the Savoy. It was on the south side, and it was a dance hall. A lot of these places would get tied up. A lot of these barnstorming teams would get tied into like their home games being played at dance halls because they could sell tickets to a dance They could spread all the tables and everything out. They could play a basketball game to help bring people in. And then afterwards, you just turn the floor into the dance floor. Like, you can use these two things kind of interchangeably to try to bring this up. The Savoy Hall or the Savoy Five end up kind of splitting. There's a little bit of a fracture to them. As that happens, sorry, cough button, my bad. The dispute happens in 1928, and we're kind of slipping ahead with just the Harlem Globetrotters. It causes the five to split. There were several members that would go on to form the Harlem Globetrotters. This guy named Tommy Brookins, and the reason that I bring this story up is because usually the Globetrotters get attributed to this guy that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. He actually ends up taking over. But Tommy Brookins does all the booking for him. He kind of founds the team. This guy named Abe Saperstein, that's this little Jewish fella, I think he's like 5'4", just absolutely loves basketball. 5'4" is not going to get you very far unless you're Spud Webb or Earl Boykins. Like, those are the two exceptions to the rule.
Saperstein does not sound like in the same vein.
The NBA was fairly Jewish heavy, like in the beginning. Yeah, obviously the New York teams.
Oh, okay, there we go.
But that wasn't supposed to be mean.
No, like geographically, it makes sense.
Came across as mean. Abe Saperstein was a promoter. This guy knew how to make things happen. He promoted dance halls, he promoted clubs, bars, all that kind of stuff. He would promote other basketball teams. Abe Saperstein gets a hold of the Harlem Globetrotters. He's like, yes, this is awesome. We are going to do so much with you. And I'm probably going to end up doing a teaching episode on the Globetrotters because they're so incredible. I don't want to bury a lot of this stuff. They're going to come up a lot in this story. But, God damn it, again. The Globetrotters were so good that they actually created their shtick because they were playing so many games. They would play up to 200 games in a year. There were some weeks where they would travel from town to town to where they would play 7 days a week and they'd play twice on Sunday.
They were close. They were hitting that many places that it was just a day between
towns. They would jump in. There was 5 guys on the team. So you were playing every single night in a 5-on-5 game. Then you all pile into a Model T with little Abe Saperstein driving you along the way. If you're lucky enough, you're stopping off at a hotel that allows black people to stay there.
Just the thought of, okay, so these guys roll into your town, night 1. They play, you're like, this is fucking incredible. Like, I've never seen anything like this. And then to basically have them be like, hey, we're literally playing 10 miles down the road tomorrow night. You're fucking going to that. You can follow, you're like, I actually followed them on like 3 different stops. All the towns were close enough together.
There's a very funny story that I don't want to burn now, but it's just, they end up going to a little town. It must have been in Iowa. And they're talking to the fans after the game. And one of the guys goes, I love you guys. I saw you guys in Rapid City the other night. And everybody kind of stops and looks at each other and like, we weren't in Rapid City the other night. We didn't. No, that wasn't the Globetrotters. Like, no, it was the Globetrotters. So they go to Abe and they're like, hey, man, they were talking about a game in Rapid City the other night, and we never played there. Why did they say they saw the Globetrotters play there? And Abe's like, I started a second team. I figured we could all use a little extra money. So there's a second Globetrotters out there. They're like,
but you're not paying us any more money.
Yeah.
I thought I could actually make a little bit more money.
Turns out you're the only one that's scraping off the top from both of us. But they were just so good that they would show up to these places. And just like we talked about with the other barnstorming teams, you don't want to blow them out so bad, blow out local teams so bad that they don't want to invite you back.
Piss off people that you're embarrassing people like locally there.
Yeah.
They're going to walk out. So what they will not surprisingly walk out is when you're doing antics that are so demoralizing, not from a points perspective, but just in the fact of ball handling and like just faking these guys out. They'll actually stay for that.
Yeah, the passing back and forth, all that kind of stuff. It's all a part of the Harlem Globetrotters legacy. And they would get up to like a 10-point lead in a game. They knew that they had the game in hand. They also knew that they had another game 60 miles away the next day.
You gotta save those knees.
Yep. we can't keep running up and down the court, so we're going to start doing these dribbling exhibitions, these passing things, just anything to keep the crowd entertained and not let them realize that we're up by 10, 20 points.
Yeah.
Like, we want to make sure they go home with a memory. In 1939, they lose what's called the World Professional Basketball Tournament to the New York Rens. The following year, they end up winning the tournament. This tournament is open to anybody and everybody, any leagues. There's no color barrier here, so you're getting teams from all over the country, whether it be a good team from like the Pipe Fitters Union, whether you get some other small startup, you get these smaller leagues. But
you're also developing talent. You're also finding these players that'll come in and you can be like, why isn't this guy playing for one of the professional leagues at this time?
Yeah, it's just so incredible. So in order to get to where they could do what they were doing, this blows me away. 1897, Yale invents the dribble. They invent the dribble because in the original rules, you can't move, right?
As soon as the ball's in your possession, you're frozen.
But if you...
It's like you already dribbled.
Yep.
Yep.
But if you pass the ball off the ground to yourself, you can pass the ball and take a step, pass the ball and take a step, pass the ball and take a step. That's how dribbling just becomes invented. December 30th, 1936, this guy named Hank Lucetti plays for Stanford. He's the first guy to really like introduce like a running jump shot. Before it was just 2 feet on the ground, maybe a little hop, but you're just throwing that ball.
So the movement and the dribbling was just to get the ball down into range for somebody to pass it to make a shot. But once they were close enough, you passed it off. That person was probably not going to dribble. They were just going to try to shoot their shot. He's now in a position where he's taking it into position with a dribble to shoot his shot.
Shooting it one-handed, jumping up into the air, running. It just blows.
What's that boy doing?
Yeah.
He's airborne.
Kind of the interesting thing about it was playing for Stanford on the West Coast, the news of games from Stanford wouldn't get back to the East Coast for like a day or two. Because if they're playing a game on Saturday night, Sunday's paper is already there. So Monday is when they're getting the news about this. He ends up going back and playing against Long Island University, who had a 43-game win streak at the time. And Lucetti doesn't score a ton of points. I think he had like 15. But it's the first time that the East Coast actually gets to see a team or a guy doing like a running jump shot at the hoop.
Which, if you've never seen that before, you have no defense for it.
Yeah. The whole idea is trying to get open on a set shot, whereas if you're moving... It's the
Father Pat thing, seeing the alley-oop, and he's like, foul. Wait. It's like, is he allowed to be moving when he shoots it? They're like, I guess there's no rule against it.
I'm sure the East Coast was just an entire group of Father Pats. They had never seen it before. Lucetti becomes the first player to score 50 points in a college game. Like, it's that effective.
Yeah. At a certain point, they did cut, because we've already moved on again to hoops and backboards and everything. Part of the progression back when it was actually like peach baskets is they got tired of actually stopping the game and having the janitor get the ladder, like literally having the janitor get the ladder, get the ball out of the basket and starting over again. So they poked a hole in it, not big enough for the ball to go through, because again, you don't want people fighting underneath the hoop, but enough to where you could get a stick and then poke the ball out. And then once nets were invented, then it was a free for all.
Just wild that that's what happens. 1937. Let's see, where are we at? 1937. The National Basketball League is formed. This is the second iteration of it, but this is actually much bigger. It was actually started by 3 corporations. So this is kind of where you start to see like, okay, well, we can probably make some money off of this. The 3 corporations started at General Electric, Firestone, and Goodyear. Heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Heavy hitters. Firestone and Goodyear, known for rubber, right?
Yeah.
I almost forgot about it. Chuck Taylor, we're going to talk about him right now. We got a flashback to the 1920s. Where are we at for time?
50.
Okay.
Bathroom break?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
We'll be back with more Chuck Taylor.
Well, hey there, all you sexy historians. How you guys doing?
It is time for
socials.
Where can they find us on Instagram?
If they want to follow us, they can find us at Historically High Pod on Instagram.
That goes the same for Threads as well. You can also find us on Twitter.
Tell them about Twitter.
Historically High. That's Historically HI on Twitter.
And if you want to email any of your comments or suggestions, where can they find us at, Adam?
At Historically High Podcast at gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, and back to the show.
All right. Why should we give a fuck about Chuck?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Everybody knows Chuck Taylor. I mean, Chuck Taylor's, whether you know who Chuck Taylor is or not, you know Chuck Taylor because everybody is probably either owned or just knows about Converse Chuck Taylors.
Yep.
It's something that's so synonymous with the world.
They're the shoes that, like, when you have to have a generic shoe in a movie, in the same way that it'll be like Vans or Keds. Now it's that nondescript fucking, it used to always be a pair of Converse All-Stars.
And they're just so rudimentary. I haven't bought a pair in probably 6 or 7 years, but I wear a 14 and everything else. I can wear a 13 pretty easily.
There's just much comfier shoes.
Well, they're just so big and floppy that the sizing is completely off.
And the way that they're actually set up, they actually would resemble clown shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was a groundbreaking change in the 20s. This was something that you go from playing in these leather shoes to the Converse rubber, or what was it? The Converse Rubber Shoe Company. That's just literally what it was named.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to know their mission statement to know what they're doing with the Converse Rubber Shoe Company. Chuck Taylor was a fairly decent basketball player. He was born in Indiana. We talked about during the Bird episode. In 49 other states, it's just basketball. But he was so good at playing that he was going to have to move up to try to find a professional league to try to make this happen. But you don't have like full financial support just playing in a pro league back then.
Yeah.
You
were clocking out, and the games weren't prime time or weren't in the middle of the day games.
Yep.
You were clocking out, going and getting your gym bag out of your car, and then driving, to get changed.
Yeah, you had to go throw packages. You had to go cut meat. It's
fucking rec softball, baby.
And Chuck, supposedly there's some lore that he actually wore the predecessor to the Converse All-Star when he was in high school and college. I don't know if it's true or not. There's no real documentation. But he goes to Converse one day and he's like, hey, I really like what you have here. I'm a basketball player. I think that we can market these. I have a couple ideas to start changing them up. And not only is he a semi-pro basketball player, but then he becomes a salesman for Converse. He is pretty brilliant with his marketing strategy because he just kind of sees what's out there. And just like you have door-to-door salesmen that go now, he starts to run this Converse All-Star Barnstorming team. So you're going out, you're sponsored by Converse. They are wearing the Converse All-Stars. They're going and playing in these
They're beating
towns.
the shit out of other teams.
Yeah, exactly.
How are they doing this? It's got to be the shoes.
Got to be the shoes. So he's out there just selling on the road and making all of these connections. And not only that, in between being the coach of this team.
Just canvas and rubber sole, right?
Yep.
Yep.
You have his semi-pro basketball career. He also begins teaching basketball clinics at North Carolina State, and everything sponsored by Converse. That's just the way that he's getting these kids at these basketball clinics to buy into these shoes, and he's just selling everything for Converse that he can. He ends up expanding it nationwide. There's times when he'll fly over into Europe and he'll put on these clinics with the Converse name behind everything else. He actually becomes kind of like, I wouldn't call it the first scout, but he's traveling to all these different areas and he's seeing these basketball players play and he knows who's good and who's not. So when it comes time for him to go to a campus to teach a clinic, you have the head coach of these teams being like, hey, you've been everywhere else in this area. Who is good? Who should we be going out and recruiting? Who should we be trying to bring in?
He's like, I could probably tell you if you want to go ahead and outfit your team with some Converse All-Stars.
I see you guys don't have a sponsor for your athletic stuff. I think I could help you out with that.
Might I offer my services?
But he changes the game. He does so much for Converse that they changed the name to the Chuck Taylor All-Star, or the All-Star Chuck Taylor Converse. It's just or Chuck Taylor All-Stars.
Yes.
Converse Chuck Taylor All-Stars. I have like 3 pairs of them. I haven't bought a whole lot of them. They're great to wear with jeans, but other than that, when your feet are my size, as Chris was talking about earlier, they begin to look like clown shoes in Chucks. But he's just such a big part of how the game changes and evolves. You have the Dossler brothers in
okay, hang on. So, okay, I'm trying to remember from the Nike episode. He makes such an impact as far as the NBA goes that at the time that Nike is trying to get in and have their shoes on the court, the biggest star in the NBA is a contracted Converse athlete.
And it's because it's at that point in time Converse had released the weapons that they gave to Bird and Magic.
Okay.
So you have Converse kind of ruling the roost. After Converse
were they
starts
some
out,
of the only shoes allowed in the NBA?
No.
Okay.
There were regulations at that point in time, but
those fit the mold.
Yeah.
Okay.
And after that, in Germany, you have the Dossler brothers, Adidas and Puma. Adidas comes out first with the Superstar, kind of a funny ripoff of the All-Star, it feels like. It was pretty revolutionary. You have Puma meeting that with the Puma Clyde that they made for Clyde Frazier.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to kind of see this building, but it all takes place because Chuck Taylor was out there to make those inroads and to do the things that he did for a rubber-soled shoe. It has to be the easiest problem to fix. Leather shoes on wooden courts just suck.
Mm-hmm.
All you got to do is create a little bit of rubber to put between you.
The first dude wearing the rubber shoes when he went to go stop and everyone just goes, just slides past him.
I'm so open. I get an open shot every single time. So now that we got Chuck covered, we will head back up to 1937 with the National Basketball League. It's formed by General Electric, Firestone, and Goodyear. I'm sure they probably like the rubber market too. They were made up of kind of these small Great Lakes area teams and then corporate teams. You have the Minneapolis Lakers. Sorry, Chris and I are struggling voice-wise. It's a late season sick for both of us.
The Minneapolis Lakers.
Yeah, we're playing through the pain, though, and we still got high for this episode, so we're trying to really do this.
We're making this as difficult on ourselves as we can.
The Minneapolis Lakers. Why did the Minneapolis Lakers sound so familiar? Well, the Minneapolis Lakers would become the LA Lakers. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of lakes in LA.
Yeah.
A lot of lakes in Minnesota.
I always see it as the opening scene from Basketball where it explains the movement of the NBA teams. And it's like the Utah or the New Orleans Jazz, right? Mm-hmm. Moved to Salt Lake City where they don't allow music. And it's talking about all the irony of moving to some place that didn't have lakes. And the same reason you have the Los Angeles Dodgers because Dodgers were a New York thing.
Brooklyn. Yep. You were dodging trains.
Mm-hmm.
The Fort Wayne Pistons. This one threw me through a loop. Being a Pistons fan, I didn't see this coming. The Fort Wayne Pistons would become the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, Fort Wayne, Indiana.
I just always...
Oh, wait, hold on.
Fort Wayne, Indiana, yes. But there must have been car manufacturers in Fort Wayne, too, for Piston? And then they just happened to go to Detroit to Motor City to be the Pistons?
I mean, you're talking about 1937. We just did, and I don't know if it's out at this point, but the Ford episode when we talked about how large that got, the first place that's going to spread out is going to be more in that local area when that car manufacturing boom happens. There was, I'm guessing that there was probably auto manufacturing just all over that area because that's still within the same area of Detroit and Michigan.
You don't change that name when you bring it to Detroit.
No. Oh, God, no. That you have to get that team to come to Detroit because of that.
We have the Denver Nuggets, still around today. The Rochester Royals, that would eventually end up in Sacramento and become the Kings. The Buffalo Blackhawks, who would eventually move down to Atlanta and become the Atlanta Hawks. The Syracuse Nationals, that would eventually make their way to Philadelphia and become the 76ers. Like, there's just so many of these teams that get their foundings all the way back in 1937 to a league that becomes, I wouldn't say defunct, but it has to become something else to be bigger.
It's a corporate league.
Yeah.
I mean, you could call what we have today a corporate league and everything, but no, literally, it was just some corporations forming teams.
It blows me away that these people or these teams had this staying power. We get all the way up to their final or their eventual challenger in 1946, the one that stuck around, the BAA, the Basketball Association of America.
Not in name, but in essence of the company itself. Because the BAA isn't a thing.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Interesting way that this league ends up getting formed is there's a group of hockey arena owners that take a look at their spreadsheets and like, well, our off nights, we're not doing anything and we have to pay rent on this big giant arena. What can we bring in that maybe we can just lay some wood over the ice? We can throw up a couple hoops. All of a sudden we can have basketball on off nights for hockey.
Or they could run basketball concurrent of hockey season. And instead of only being able to use the hockey arena during hockey season or when that's popular, well, I guess they would just have them for like collegiate hockey and like just wanting to practice and everything. But yeah, anytime that it wasn't being used for that intended purposes, it's wasting money.
Yeah, so
form a team.
It makes so much sense. So from the BAA, we get the second iteration of the Celtics in Boston, the New York Knicks still around, the Philadelphia Warriors that would eventually become the Golden State Warriors after going to San Francisco and then to Oakland and now back to San Francisco. Got to call them Golden State because they can't make a choice on which side of the bay to be on.
Fine, move, but stay in the fucking state so the name is still applicable.
Yeah. 1949, the BAA and the NBL kind of realized that they're stronger together, and it's mostly because of something that they're going to run into again here in a couple decades, but their market reach can become so much bigger.
So this is where you get the formation of the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, so you have the BAA, which is the Basketball Association of America.
Yep.
You have the National Basketball League. They're having this negotiation. How long do you think the discussion was about figuring out whose word they get to use from their title? They're like, okay, well, we could be the Basketball Association League. Like, no, it's got to have something else in it. Well, it could be the National Basketball of America. They're like, nope. We got to have a different word from ours. And then having to go back and look at all the other defunct leagues.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how many iterations has, this been used for national basketball and something else? But yeah, so that's where you actually get them being like, fine, it's settled. National Basketball Association.
I wonder if they looked at it and they're like, all right, we got to form a name. How are we going to do this? And the NBL's like, no, we were around first. Let's just be called the NBL. And the BAA is like, no, we're actually doing better than you are. So let's go with us. They're like, all right, we know we have to have a B in there. Basketball. You get the one letter, I get the other letter. In the first, the NBL's like, national. We want national.
They finally just throw it at a wall, and whatever it ends up popping up as.
But they figured it out. The BAA and BL come together. You get the NBA. We're still looking at a league that is segregated. And this kind of changes quickly. In 1948, after the season happens, the Lakers had been playing kind of in and out of the BAA and the NBL. They win the BAA championship. Exhibition game comes calling. Harlem Globetrotters want to come in and play the champions.
The reigning champs.
The reigning champions of the world.
Of this preeminent National Basketball League.
We have an all-white Minneapolis Lakers team versus an all-black Globetrotters team. The Lakers
dominate.
Have a guy, the Lakers have a guy named George Mikan. George Mikan is a historic basketball player, giant white man. There's a basketball drill named after him that I will do in my sleep for the rest of my life. He was very, very good. He was so good that they had to invent the key in order to keep him. I believe it was a 12-foot key for him to try to keep him away from the basket because he could just get down there and work his way in.
Okay, so initially the key existed before him, but it was in the shape that we traditionally see a key in, where it's skinny coming up and then circular at the top.
Yeah.
But the reason it looked like a key, and you're thinking to yourself, the fucking key of a basketball court doesn't look like that. the lane used to be much, much narrower. So it actually resembled like a keyhole. This guy was so dominant. There was the rule about having to leave the key and everything, but because he could just bounce out side to side, he was so dominant on the boards that he could simply just control that area and never be 3 in the key, 3 seconds in that key and be penalized for it. They're like, we got to fucking do something. We got to make the key bigger to shift him and get him out of there.
That's the kind of effect that this guy had on the game. He would actually, the end of his career would come at the invention of the shot clock.
Yeah.
Because he eventually was just
for him.
so giant and so slow that for him to get up and down the court, he knew that 24 seconds was not going to be enough.
He was going to be
him.
down in the key with like 2 or 3 seconds left.
Yep. It wasn't going to happen for him. But you have these Lakers go up against the Globetrotters, a barnstorming team that has lived past all of the other barnstorming teams.
It's a
into
leave
the
no
50s.
doubt type game for the Lakers.
Yeah. And the Lakers end up falling on a last-second shot to the Globetrotters. The Globetrotters, a team that is not allowed in the league, just comes in and beats the champs.
Who's a traveling gimmick.
Yeah. They come in and get them by a point. They get them by a bucket. Next year rolls around, you have the Lakers wanting to get revenge, I'm sure, against the Globetrotters. The Globetrotters go ahead and decide to do this again, and this time there's no doubt. They just absolutely blow them out in 1949, and it doesn't take too long after that because the newly formed NBA would end up desegregating, I believe it was that same year. It might have been in 1980. Let me see.
Somewhere right around that period, though.
Or, no, 1950. Yes, 1950 is when it happens. So the Globetrotters, an all-black team, came in and just beat the living shit out of the Lakers. And like, we need black people. Mm-hmm. We need them in this league.
Wow.
As soon as that happens, the Globetrotters kind of run into an issue because as soon as black people are allowed in the NBA, they're going to probably be making a better livelihood with a little bit better schedule playing in the NBA.
There's also so much more selection, so much more availability of positions that they can play. It's not just, even if you have 3 or 4 iterations of the Harlem Globetrotters playing around at different points in the country, 20 jobs. Yeah. If you're doing also subs and everything like that. But now all of a sudden positions open up for you on every NBA team. And who are they going to be going after first?
Yeah.
The guys that they know what they can play.
The guys that just beat the champs.
Yeah.
So we see Chuck Cooper, who becomes the first black player drafted into the NBA by the Celtics. Nat Sweetwater Clifton becomes the first black player to sign an NBA contract. He signs with the Knicks. Earl Lloyd actually becomes the first black player to play in an NBA game on October 31st, 1950. And they all were drafted at the same time, but just on the order of when games are played. Yeah. That's sort of how that happens all in 1950. He plays for the Washington Capitals. This blew me away. 1947-48 season. Wataru Misaka, American-born Japanese player, plays in the NBA.
First one to break the color barrier, technically.
Yeah. Japanese guy that close to World War II feels like that's pretty surprising.
Not even if okay. Hey, what race was the person to first break the color barrier in basketball?
Japanese.
Yeah, come on. That's more shocking than the fact that it was around World War II.
Good point. 1954 is when the shot clock goes in and we wave goodbye to George Mikan. 1954 as well. The NBA was down to only 8 franchises. That's a bad sign.
Yeah.
You're losing teams left and right. You are in trouble. You're not making a ton of money.
That's the thing is it's like we talk about this now. Like you can never imagine that there was never an NBA, that it was never not successful in this juggernaut of, sports. They're still at a time now where nothing is a given. They're still just trying to figure this shit out. And it's not connecting.
Yeah. Dude, you don't also have the ability. You're on radio and you're in print.
Yep.
There's no real TV stations to try to get this message out. You're
still a gimmick is kind of what you are. You're something like, hey, did you want to go see a basketball game tonight? Are they doing that? Like,
You need a savior.
yeah.
You need somebody to draw those eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1957, out of the University of San Francisco, you get Bill Russell. I add the colleges into these because some of them are so silly. Like the University of San Francisco put out one of the 5 to 10 greatest basketball players of all time. Just so surprising to me that some of these guys came from these places.
French Lick, Indiana.
True.
Okay.
Indiana State.
Yeah.
I think people know, more people know who Larry Bird is than know that Indiana State's a college.
Yeah. But people know Indiana State as a basketball school because of Larry Bird.
Yeah. He would end up getting drafted by the Celtics, teammate of Bob Cousy. I bring in Bob Cousy here because he actually is the first player to attempt to try to form a union for the players. All the way back in 1954, and we'll talk about them unionizing here in a second. A master class. I don't know if you know the story about the All-Star game, but it's beautiful. It's brilliant. Russell would go on to win 11 championships in 13 seasons with the Celtics. He was named the player coach after one of the most legendary coaches in NBA history, Red Auerbach. Just one of the most dominant runs. And you can say there's only 8 franchises, so he's
So he literally was, they were like, the current coach that was there when he was making his run, or like in the early portion of his run.
Yep.
He ends up quitting. Mm-hmm. And then they're just like, fuck it, Bill. I mean,
Red Auerbach, it said that Red Auerbach specifically said, if I retire, Bill Russell needs to be playing and coaching this team.
It's Jackie Moon. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of semi-pro references once we get up to the merger here.
Yeah, we're going to be getting hot with those pretty soon. But just absolutely dominant. A guy that brought people in from everywhere. And Bill Russell, if you've ever seen a picture of him, just a mountain of a man. Just incredible stature. Not too far after that, in fact, the next year, 1958, Wilt Chamberlain forgoes his senior season at Kansas. You can't do that. The rule in the NBA is you have to go 4 years of college.
Okay. I was going to ask, when did that get? So this is essentially the challenge of that.
No, because he has an option. Because he goes and plays that senior season. It has to be 4 years removed from high school.
Okay.
He plays that senior season with the Globetrotters. Wilt Chamberlain.
So from a marketing standpoint, this is fucking genius.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this is at a time when games are on the radio. You're reading about them in the paper. You can look at a line and say, holy shit, look at Wilt Chamberlain's numbers. Or you can see Wilt Chamberlain traveling around the country to every city at some point that has an NBA team in which the owner can then be looking at him and seeing how he plays, and in which he can probably be, because he's playing for the Globetrotters, be talking to those people regarding money.
And you set this up perfectly, because in 1959, he debuts for the Warriors, and his first contract that he signs is the largest NBA contract at the time. He signs a $30,000 rookie year contract. You haven't even played at all in the NBA, and you just signed the richest contract out there.
There had to have been like some type of like backdoor bidding war between all these. He was basically probably just going around, and after he played in their city, he was like, write down your offer. Once the season's over, I'm going to take all your guys' envelopes. I'm going to open them, and whoever offers me, you're not going to know how much the other guys are offering.
Yep.
So whoever wants to give the best offer, that's who I'm coming to play for.
I'm so glad that we're doing this. Remember that you just said that, because we got something similar coming up. Chamberlain would become just an instant star. He still holds 72 NBA records.
And
he
several other records.
Excuse me.
Several other records.
Yeah. Yep. He holds some off the court records that I don't think can ever be broken too.
Probably some of those on the court as well.
Yep. So some of his highlights, these two that we're going to talk about right now, they happened. I believe that they happened. I have no reason not to believe that they happened. Unfortunately, they didn't ever happen as far as being recorded. And they're just so crazy. He's the only player to ever score 100 points in a game.
And isn't that recognized by the NBA still?
Yep.
Okay.
No documentation of it. He holds the record for the most rebounds pulled down in one game, 55 rebounds, which can sometimes be like literally
Every single rebound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to remember at the time, and I'm not putting caveats on any of this stuff because it's incredible, but you don't have a 3-point line. So you have a lot of guys that are coming in closer and shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you have a lot more people around the rim. If he can stay down around there and
There's
pick
no
those
incentive
balls
to
up,
spread the defense out. No one
Yeah.
needs, there's no incentive to shoot further away from the hoop. It's getting as close as you can every time.
it's two everywhere. So if Chamberlain's down there a lot, he's going to be pulling down a lot of them just because of his size and stature. This absolutely blew me away. He held an entire season, averaged 50 points a game. Nowadays, scores, I believe the average is right around like 104. Back then, you're talking about a lot less. So him averaging basically a half of team's points just based on his own play for an entire season.
A half a team's points now. It was probably closer to 3/4 of his team's points for, the majority of the season.
Good chance. Never even thought this one was possible. He averaged for an entire season 48 minutes a game.
So he played every minute.
Yep. NBA games are 48 minutes, and he, for an entire season, averaged an entire game. Which, I guess...
The stamina,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, a guy that can play 48 minutes for an entire season may have betted 20,000 women, too. So... can't not bring that record up, that off-the-court record that probably still stands. The math I don't really understand. Like, it's a lot of women, very fast, and a lot during one day at a time. Tiredest guy in the NBA.
What do you do if you miss a day?
Yeah. Well, and you're doing that, and you're going and playing a 48-minute basketball game that night. Just incredible. And scoring 50. So we get to the 1964 All-Star Game. You know how I was talking about Bob Cousy starting the Players Union in 1954? Never recognized by the NBA ownership. They felt that this was so important to try to get this union because you needed a pension plan.
Is it the NBAPL, the NBA Players Association now?
Yeah, NBAPA.
Okay, so the same way that you have the NFL Players Association. Yep. Okay. Does baseball have an MLB?
Yep.
Okay. All of them have.
Yeah.
Okay, some type of collective for collective bargaining, things like that.
But none of them are like the NBA. And I think that it all starts here. 1964 All-Star Game almost doesn't happen because of a boycott by the Players Association. And that was unrecognized at the time. They go to the owners before the game.
Unrecognized by the owners.
Yes.
Definitely recognized by the players.
Oh, for sure. This All-Star Game is the first game on a 17-game contract that they have with ABC. This is like the first big chance for them to get on a national stage. It's so important. And before the game, I believe it was somebody on the Celtics. His name escapes me, but he's kind of the new head of this Players Association. And before the All-Star Game happens, the day before, it's happening in Boston, he goes, we are going to send a list of demands to the owners. We want a pension plan because everybody that plays in the NBA, if you're playing in the NBA and you absolutely wreck your body after 2 seasons and you can't go get a job after that, where are you going to be making your money?
Yeah.
If you have a pension plan based upon how many years in the league you played is how much you get paid out, there's always going to be a way for
Standard
you to
shit
protect
now.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the owner's like, that's going to cost too much. We're not going to do that. We're not going to recognize you as a union. We're not going to do that. Our travel schedules are all based upon how we can make the most money and maximize this kind of stuff. And also, when you get drafted to a team, you're just ours.
Yeah.
Like there's no chance for you to try to play other teams and contracts to try to make all this happen.
This is back in the day where everyone thought like Jerry Jones.
Yep.
Yep.
So, day before the All-Star Game happens, giant snowstorm on the Northeast, or in the Northeast. All of the planes get diverted to get to the All-Star Game. Nobody can show up to this game that day to try to talk to the owners because it's just chaos trying to get there for this game. Day of the game happens. I believe tip-off was supposed to be at 9 o'clock. At like 6 o'clock, Players Union rep goes and talks to the commissioner of the NBA, and he goes, we need to get this deal with the owners figured out. And he's like, yeah, not a fucking chance. And he goes, all right, well, we're not going to play. And he's like, no, you'll play. You understand the implications of this is you're all contracted with us. We'll just fire all of you. Not remembering that the 20 best players in your faltering league can't all be fired. You can't fire your 20 biggest draws.
One of probably the only reasons that you're still alive at that point.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he goes to the owners. He's like, hey, they say they're not going to play unless you guys hammer this stuff out. They say, well, tell them that we're going to go ahead and take care of it later on after the game. We recognize the problem now that you guys have been bringing up for 10 years. Now we want to face it. We'll talk about it after. Let's just get through tonight, and then we'll worry about it later. Goes back to the players. Commissioner tells them that. He goes, tell them to fuck themselves. We're not going to play. Goes back to the owners, tells them that. They go, okay, well, I guess it's not going to happen. ABC then walks in the door and he's like, if you don't go out and play this game, if you blow...
We're fucking NBC. If you embarrass...
ABC.
Oh, I thought you said NBC.
ABC.
They're ABC?
Yep.
Still, we're the American Broadcasting Corporation. Like, if you embarrass us, like, we don't have anything else to throw in nationally here. If you fuck us on this, we will sink you.
We're out of the basketball business.
Yeah.
It'll never happen for you without a big national contract. Oh, and you think any of the other networks are going to see this little stunt and want to sign you after this? This is pre-ESPN. So far pre-ESPN. So they go back to the players and they're like, ugh. All right. We'll make some concessions. You guys make some concessions. We'll see what happens. And the players go, no, we're going to send you over a list of demands. And if you don't sign it, we're just not going to go out there. I don't know how embellished the story is, but supposedly game starts at 9. At 8:55, the deal is struck. And they walk out onto the court and they play the All-Star game and single-handedly save the NBA's contracts with ABC. But not only that,
all the other players at home are just like, game's going to start. No fucking clue what's going on. They
no
come in
idea.
They come in for work like the next day and they're like, hey, we all got pension and benefits and everything. They're like, what the fuck happened?
What's an HMO? What is this? But it gives them so much power to become the union that they are today. And I would say undoubtedly just based upon their pay scale, they're the most successful union that there is.
Yeah.
There's guys in the NBA.
There's no numbers like a basketball contract.
Yeah, you can't beat it. And it is 82 games as opposed to, 17 games in the NFL. I want to say 82 games in hockey too. 162 games in the MLB.
Which is fucking insane.
Yeah. They have a lot more chances to make more money to be able to pay players just based upon the games and the rights and everything like that. But the NBA still pays the richest salaries.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible how well they do. At the same time, they get their union recognized by the NBA so they can start doing things like collective bargaining agreements to figure that stuff out. They get their pension plan, so everybody's taken care of after that. And this is kind of like when the NBA starts to get poked by the interior. And then in 1967, you get an attack from the exterior as the ABA begins, and they sort of look at the landscape, the American Basketball Association. They look at the landscape like, well, there's a lot more markets out here that are outside of where the NBA is that we can probably take advantage of.
This game's still kind of slow. Like, I think we could ramp this up. It hasn't reached that. It didn't go all the way Globetrotters. It didn't go. It became kind of like a hybrid version of it, but there's still so much more room for improvement from a entertainment, just like to keep people captivated level. The ABA, kind of like the AFL.
Yeah.
The ABA saw things and they were just like, even if we don't beat them, there's enough of a market here that we can be a little bit different and people will actually come over and watch our shit.
Well, they're not down in Houston. They're not down in some of these other big cities that have a massive population. There's also chances for local TV deals around there too. Like there's money to be made.
Cheaper tickets. People can't go see an NBA game. Come see an ABA game.
Yeah. Along with that, the ABA just knew how to market. Just ABA
Flint,
inventions.
Michigan Makeable.
Huh?
Flint, Michigan Makeable.
Yeah, dude.
Well, they also had player, owner, halftime entertainer, manager, players out there like fucking Jackie Moon.
Bear wrestler. The guy's out there wrestling a bear at halftime. Just doing what he can to put asses in seats. Just some of their inventions that the NBA will eventually absorb. They're the first league to do a dunk contest. So everybody has All-Star Weekend. They looked at this situation and they're like, well, everybody loves dunks. It's the number one thing that people tune in for. We don't have a 3-point line yet, which they'll create, but let's give them the most exciting play in sports. And they do a dunk contest with their All-Star game and everybody loves it. Like we just mentioned, they were the first basketball association to make a 3-point line. They created a whole nother way to give you an exciting shot, but to also reward the team for trying it.
We're opening up the floor. Now it's not just about it's not just about the scrum down low and the ball has to be so close to the basket or anything. You want to see some shit flying from far away? Yeah, we got that.
Yeah, if you make that shot more enticing, it changes the way the game is played.
Think of the fucking excitement. Yeah, it's 1 point. Do you remember an NBA Jam where you could play with hotspots? And you'd cross the entire court to do it, regardless if you missed 50 times? The excitement when someone pulled up and you were just like, oh shit, and they pull up on that 3-point line and they try to fire it off, from downtown, and it goes in, and people are like, he just made it. It's so common now, which is insane. Like, Steph Curry spoiled the shit.
Yes.
By making it look like it's so easy for people that have never really played basketball, but to consistently make a 3-pointer, or even just to make one, requires some fucking skill. And so to see someone pull up and shoot that and it just fucking drains it, they're like, that's insane. Like, we maybe are going to see that 1 or 2 times a game.
Yeah, and that's, if you don't have a 3-point line, it may not ever even be that. You might be getting a 10 or 12 footer at most.
Just because desperation.
Yeah, that's as far away from the scrum as you needed to be to get a shot.
As the shot clock runs out, that's the only reason to shoot from more than 12 feet out.
Yeah. You also get fun, colorful jerseys. You get sort of a style of their own where you see players begin to express themselves.
Well, and I know I keep going back to semi-pro, but it actually does contain some of the true elements of how the actual merger happened.
Yes.
So this is where you have teams that, the 4 teams that are going to be brought in with the merger are going to be the Spurs, the Indiana Pacers, the, is it the Nuggets? No, not the Nuggets, because they were one of the originals.
Yeah. Nuggets, Pacers, Nets, and Spurs.
Nets, that's right.
We'll talk about them in a second when we come to this whole merger. 2 of their kind of big deals that they had beyond the excitement. Sorry, we're struggling. And I lost my place. This edible is really just whooping my ass. They also had the ability to change how they drafted. So if you're not the NBA, you don't have to have the 4 years after high school eligibility.
Oh shit. That's the perfect way to undercut. Like, you can't play for them until you've played your, 4 years, or you've taken 4 years out of high school. But I mean, if you're ready to go after 2 years of college, man, why are you putting your career on hold? Start playing basketball for us right away, professional basketball.
Get while the getting's good.
Start making that fucking money.
Yep, exactly. So when you're going up against that and you can draft, you start to run into issues because just like you see like I don't want to use him as an example because he's such a little punk. Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
He gets drafted by the Rangers. He gets drafted by the Seahawks. He gets drafted in both sports. Well, this is one sport where you can be drafted by 2 leagues.
Oh.
So when the draft happens, we get to 1967 or 19.
Okay, so trying to break this down. So you could bounce out 2 years of college. You go play for the ABA.
Yep.
After you played for the ABA for 2 years, you would then become eligible and show up in essentially the list of draftable players for the NBA that year.
Yeah, so you could even use it as a stepping stone that way.
You already have a book of business.
Pretty much,
I'm ready to go.
Yeah, there's a strategy in how to make this happen if you want to. 1960, Big O, Oscar Robertson, drafted from Cincinnati to the Cincinnati Royals. Doesn't have to move very far from the University of Cincinnati to just go play for the Royals.
Hometown boy.
Yeah. Oscar Robertson, a generational player as well. Forgot to mention with Chamberlain, what they did with George Mikan when they expanded the key for him. Will Chamberlain was so much better that they had to expand the key again another 4 feet.
Jesus.
Because he was that deadly and that good. So Lou Alcindor
Every
gets
time
drafted.
someone gets called for 3 in the key and they're already out to their outside, like fucking Wilt Chamberlain.
His arms are 8 feet long. He doesn't have to be that close to get it in. Lou Alcindor, now known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, leaves John Wooden in UCLA to go to the pros. Kareem is drafted first overall by the Bucks in the NBA, and the New York Nets take him first in the ABA. What do you do?
Yeah, because technically he hadn't fulfilled the 4 years outside of high school.
He
because
did all
left
4
early.
years at UCLA.
Oh, okay, he did.
Yeah, but you're drafted to both leagues. Do you go play for the NBA, the one that came first, or you go play for the ABA, the one that isn't maybe as financially sound, but at the same time, they're just more fun? So Kareem says, all right, this is what we're going to do.
What supports your playing style as well?
Yeah,
Like,
very
what
true.
do you feel like you could be more successful in? Because you could be the number 1 player in this other league, which may not be, like you said, as stable or make as much money, but because you are the best player in that league, you're going to be front and center for everything
shine.
that they do. Whereas in this other league, you've got all these other players. You might be second on your team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kareem will get to that point in his career, but he's very dominant to begin with. His idea is he tells both of the teams, he tells the Nets and the Bucks, all right, we're doing one offer. This is your best offer. Neither one of you going to know. It's a blind offer. I will take the best one. That's how we're going to settle it. And the Nets are like, oh, okay, well, I mean, he probably wants to come and play here, so we'll shoot him a pretty good offer. Nothing too great, nothing too bad. Something that would be great. He'll probably be the highest paid player in the ABA. And the Bucks are like, oh, we got to spend a lot of money here. $1.4 million.
You gotta shoot the fucking moon.
Yeah. We need this win pretty bad. So the 2 offers come in, and as soon as he reads them, he's like, all right, I'm going to go with the Bucks. I'm going to inform the Nets I'm headed that way. He calls the Nets and tells them, they're like, well, we thought you were going to try to go back and forth. He's like, no, I told you, I'm taking the best offer that I get the first time. You don't get a chance. They go, well, what if we go $3.25 million fully guaranteed? And Kareem goes, I'm going to go play for the Bucks. They fulfilled the requirements that I asked.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, Kareem becomes just an absolute monster. He, like I say, he rejects the ABA. He goes to the NBA. He turns the Bucks into just the go-to franchise. He ends up getting teamed up with Oscar Robertson, the aforementioned Oscar Robertson, for their first title in Milwaukee in 1970. It's crazy how fast this goes. Gets traded to the Lakers in 1975, stabilizes the Lakers, turns them into a power for when Magic Johnson eventually ends up
I was
coming
going
in.
to say
to get
he's
the
like the
Showtime
elder
Lakers.
statesman when Magic rolls into town, but he's at that twilight end of his career, but he's still so dominant that the combination of him and also the juxtaposition, because he was going by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at this point, I think, right?
Yeah.
The juxtaposition in his mentality and Magic, it was just this weird fucking dynamic.
But it worked. It worked so well.
Showtime Lakers.
Just a fun era for the NBA. 1976, the NBA decides that they need the ABA. The ABA decides that they have absolutely no way to keep operating this at a certain point.
This is the Michael Scott Paper Company
Yes.
versus Dunder Mifflin. Like, they might not know how long the ABA, and they're like, we got like 4 months left in this,
Yep.
but we have to make ourselves look successful.
Well, and 1976 is just in time because they started talking about this right around 1970 to see what's going to happen with this merger. And immediately when they start talking about, Oscar Robertson says, no, I'm taking this to the courts. I'm filing a lawsuit, an antitrust lawsuit against you guys. You can't merge together. And they're like, the fuck, man, why? And he goes, well, you're taking away the competition. If I don't have an ABA contract to try to negotiate my NBA contract.
There's only one game in town.
Exactly.
You're essentially, you're monopolizing it is what you're doing.
Yeah, you're taking away my right for any sort of competitive advantage during contract talks. And
I never thought about that aspect of it.
Yeah. It's you have the ability to go somewhere else. And this ends up playing out in court. The NBA ends up settling. One of the things that it kills is, so when you're drafted to a team in the NBA, you sign a contract with them. What happens is after that contract is over with, if you can't go to play for another team for another year after that contract. So they still have your rights, even though you're not under contract, to make sure that you can't go anywhere.
So you can't go play for someone else, but if you were then to turn around and play back for the NBA, there's no year penalty. You could just move and start playing.
Even with another team in the NBA.
Oh, shit.
So that was how you could keep your star on your team.
And that was also the way you could essentially control how much you were paying them.
Yeah.
Like an agreement between the owners being like, if they're not putting us in a bidding war, then we're able to go ahead and keep costs down.
And this whole entire lawsuit ends up basically opening up free agency for the NBA, because now you're able to go out and negotiate with other teams. It also is kind of the rudimentary structure for the restricted free agent, which is after your first contract, the team that drafted you or the team that has your rights has the ability to match any other offer that you get from a team for restricted free agent. So it sets up kind of like the building blocks of the structure for how free agency works now in the NBA. Big Oscar Robertson wins with a lawsuit before they even get to that point of the merger. Along with that, 1971, Spencer Haywood files a suit against the NBA because he wants to challenge this 4-year college clause. And he challenges it under the ability to say that, well, I'm already playing professionally anywhere else. What's the difference playing for you? And I have a special exception because I need to go out and start making money for my family as soon as I possibly can. So this actually breaks down the wall for the NBA to begin accepting hardship cases where you don't have to go all 4 years.
Which then turns into no restriction, basically, right?
Now it's 1 year in college.
Okay.
So for a long time it was high school, and I don't know. I think that a year in college kind of polishes you a little bit.
It's also got to be something to where, like, you're, I know a year difference in regards to, like, the development of, like, decision making for an 18-year-old probably isn't drastic. But to have so much, like, pressure on you in high school of being like, I'm trying to get to the league straight out of this, and then to have people also, like, distracting you from just the school that you need to be doing, that had to be just a clusterfuck.
When your social maturity at 18 to go straight into the NBA and get paid a bunch of money is not. Yeah. You got to have at least 1 year trying to be by yourself to
or under some type of structure of like a college team to learn the program
But that doesn't mean you shouldn't get paid if you're going to college. You should still be getting a little money, but in a little bit more of a under control atmosphere than in the NBA. So 1976, we finally get the merger happening. The merger would see 4 of the remaining 6 ABA teams absorbed into the NBA.
Flint Tropics didn't make it.
Nah, unfortunately they did not.
They lost to the Spurs in the Flint, Michigan Mega Bowl, right? For 4th place.
That's how the Spurs got in.
Yep.
So as Chris said earlier,
despite Coffee Black
coming
switching
back.
teams at what, halftime or something?
Yeah, but he knew that he was going to end up in the NBA.
Exactly.
Somebody was going to pick him up.
His heart was in Flint, though.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Him and Jackie.
What's his name in the movie? Clarence. Oh, I can't remember.
It was Coffee, and then he had another nickname, and then Clarence something. As Chris mentioned earlier, we get the Nuggets, Denver, Pacers in Indiana, the Nets in New York, and then San Antonio has the Spurs. The Pacers actually get in based on a move that the Chicago Bulls pull from the NBA, because they don't want the Pacers in because Indiana is so close to Chicago. It's going to split their fan base.
Market challenge, yeah.
At the same time, if they do that and they're the ones that end up agreeing to kill the Indiana Pacers, it might not look bad for those fans of the Indiana Pacers.
They still need to have a market. Yeah,
exactly. Also, one of the teams that was originally supposed to get in was the Kentucky Colonels. Kentucky Colonels had a guy named Artis Gilmore that was playing for them.
Isn't that who Ed Monix played for?
Oh.
I'm talking about Woody Harrelson in...
Yeah, the washing machine.
Yeah, I think they traded the washing machine to the Kentucky Colonels.
Was it to the Colonels?
Yeah.
God, I hope it was. But they had the rights to Artis Gilmore, who was playing for them at the time, also had been drafted into the NBA by the Chicago Bulls. So if the Colonels were to be one of the ones that folded up shop, since they had the rights to Artis Gilmore through
Gilmore's
the draft...
got no place to go.
Yeah, he goes straight to the Bulls.
Place he can go.
So the Bulls put their finger on the scale and say, we don't want the Colonels in, we want the Pacers in. Let's go ahead and make that happen. Colonels are out. The other team that ends up getting cut out of the six was the Spirits of St. Louis. They didn't even have the right order for the team name and the city down. The Spirits of St. Louis. They fold. But there's so much to this merger, and the ABA teams get screwed. We're not going to go into it because we have so much more to cover. But the Kentucky Colonels are given a $3 million buyout for their portion of the team. St. Louis has maybe the second most brilliant idea this episode after the 64 All-Star game. They take a $2.2 million payout and then sign a contract for 1/7 of the 4 remaining teams' revenue in perpetuity.
Ozzie and Daniel Silna. So the 4 teams that were brought into the NBA, it's 1/7, right?
Yep.
So 1/7 of the market share from all 4 of those teams that came in as part of the merger in perpetuity. So basically, as the inflation kicks in and the NBA just explodes, television broadcasts, all of that stuff comes out, streaming.
Yeah.
They get 1/7 of all of that. As the pot gets bigger, so does theirs. So I think they said within the first 38 years of that happening, they made $300 million just simply by having this agreement. In 2015, the NBA was like, we got to quit fucking cutting. We're not the Mets paying fucking Bobby Bonilla. We got to stop fucking cutting a check to these guys for the rights to these insanely big. Like, can you imagine when the Spurs went on their fucking run?
Yeah.
How much money they were drawing in for the Silnas?
Mm-hmm.
So in 2015, they just did a buyout, and they're like, $500 million. We'll just pay you one time, $500 million right now, and we get the rights back. They're like, well, fuck it, we're going to be dead.
Yeah.
We can't even spend the 300 that we've already made. So yeah, we'll take the 5.
One of the greatest deals that could ever be made. That was so smart. And the poor lowly Kentucky Colonels that got dragged into this position to be stomped on only got $3.3 million.
Yeah, you still got 2.2 and those shares.
Yeah, you got a little walking around money first. Along with the NBA absorbing these 4 teams, the NBA also got a doctor. Dr. J.
I thought you were going to say Dr. Pep. No, I knew you were going to say Dr. J.
Julius Erving comes into the league with the Nets, and this is the before Jordan, before Dominique Wilkins, before D. Brown, before anybody in the dunk contest was anybody in the dunk contest. You have Julius Erving taking off from the foul line, and
the doctor's fucking in.
Yeah. The guy was such a star. He had the star power that the NBA needed at that time to kind of just mix in and gel. He would end up being traded to the 76ers after winning the last ABA title in 75-76 with the Nets. Right around that same time, we see the NBA finally adopt the three-point line 3 years after the merger, 3 years after the merger in 1979. So you finally get kind of like the main attraction of the ABA. The game changes.
Yep. And at this point, with this combination of certain aspects of both leagues now coming in, we're much closer to the modern iteration of how we, view the game of basketball.
Yeah. Even though all of this is happening, the merger happens. I'm sure the lawsuits didn't help a whole lot. But the NBA was struggling.
It's still not a given.
This wasn't like it was a merger that just blows them up. This was kind of a merger to survive.
Mm-hmm.
The NBA could still keep going, but at the same time, there was a finite amount of time.
We're not doing great, and we're getting bled just a little bit over here. Let's stem the bleeding, take care of this ABA issue,
Yeah.
and then we got to turn attention around and figure out what we need to do to right this ship.
And luckily, all they needed to right the ship was Larry Bird and
The Hick
Magic
from French
Johnson.
Lick and Magic.
Yep. We did an episode on them. There's not a whole lot else that we're going to cover, just kind of based upon Magic and Larry. We'll give them a quick overview on what they did as far as just to raise the popularity. In the 70s, this was the quintessential, whatever side you looked on, it was good versus evil.
East versus West.
Yep. They were, exactly. East Coast and West Coast.
Flash
This was
versus Grind.
the first beef. Pup and Suds and X-Blades.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just how it all works. But they were so intertwined in the 70s that Magic ends up leading the Lakers to 5 NBA championships, and Bird leads them, the Celtics, to 3. So you only have 2 years out of an entire decade that anybody else got any shine beside Magic or Larry.
Mm-hmm. But it was the people that you wanted there.
Yeah. It was the matchup that everybody needed to see. Right around that time, the league ends up expanding to 23 teams, so we see this growth happening.
You can tell how much that was. You're able to now expand.
Yeah.
Because of this era, because of these players.
Yeah, they got you the TV rights to make it profitable for somebody to want to invest, to buy into a franchise.
Mm-hmm. And you're spanning the country.
Yeah.
You're on both coasts.
Yeah, so I guess you're just filling in kind of everything in between. 1984, February 1st, this is going to sound like something that's pretty inconsequential, but a gentleman named David Stern, who had worked in the NBA law offices, becomes NBA commissioner. And Stern was the king of pushing growth. He was kind of the driver during this point in time where it's like, all right, we have the product. Now we need to be able to market it and get it out fucking everywhere. Mm-hmm. And he was very good at it. It also, no cough button again. I'm sorry, guys. 1984, same year. Is it a coincidence that David Stern blows up the growth in the NBA when Michael Jordan's taken 3rd in the draft? From North Carolina, Michael Jordan shows up.
Taken 3rd behind Akeem Olajuwon and Sam Bowie, who most of you never heard about except in reference to Michael Jordan, kind of in the same way at Ryan Leaf.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Leaf doesn't have anybody taken after him unless it was like Peyton Manning, maybe, that was all world.
Yeah.
But to know that the Portland Trailblazers had a chance to get Michael Jordan has to hurt. And you would think that they learned that, at any point in time in their history. But then I believe it was 2007.
Greg Oden.
They took Greg Oden over Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And Greg Oden had the needs of a 75-year-old man, and they decided to go that way. They didn't look at Greg Oden, and I believe it was that freshman year he played at Ohio State. He actually broke his right wrist, so he started shooting left-handed and ended up liking it so much that he just shot free throws left-handed after that. But they didn't realize that injury in his freshman year in college was like the bellwether for his entire career.
Yeah.
Like, that's the canary in the coal mine that maybe you take Kevin Durant over Greg Oden, but they still did it. So they kind of Bowie 2.0'd, which Sam Bowie it sucks. He got injured a lot. He wasn't that bad of a player. He just could never stay on the court. And to be taken after Akeem Olajuwon, I don't have a gripe with that because the 2 years that Jordan's gone, Hakeem Olajuwon wins 2 championships. Mm-hmm. So it's like, just because Hakeem...
Rockets?
Yeah.
Okay. Because
Hakeem gets drafted first has no bearing on the fact that he's not the man. Unfortunately, Jordan just gets drafted after him.
He's a victim the same way that everybody during that era is the victim. Like, you just played at the wrong time.
Charles Barkley was in the same draft. Mm-hmm. Just a total victim himself. Jordan and the Bulls begin their rivalry with the bad boy Pistons from 87 to 90. I'm going to bring the Pistons in here because those are my guys. Pistons and the Sonics, which became the Thunder. But this is an era where Jordan can't get over the hump, where you have Dennis Rodman, you have Isaiah Thomas, you have the rest of the Bad Boys team that just beat the hell out of Jordan.
Yeah.
That was their defense that they ran, was specifically to make him have terrible nights all the time. Excuse me. But after that, after Jordan finally gets over the hump of the Bad Boy Pistons from 1991 to 1993, they win 3 consecutive titles. A three-peat that is so rare. You're talking about 10 plus years since you've seen any kind of dominance like that. And even then, between the Lakers and the Celtics, they're still trading back and forth.
Yeah.
This is just Jordan being like 1, 2, 3. There's nothing else in the world that's going to stop me. I'm just going to keep winning these for the rest of my career unless I go ahead and retire.
Try baseball, who knows?
And this is it's a tough, sad part. There's so many conspiracy theories about this. I have my own theories about all this. Maybe there was something where Jordan got in trouble for gambling that led him to getting the suspension. Also around this time, Jordan's father is found shot dead in his car alongside the road in North Carolina. Whatever it is, it shakes Jordan up into retirement in 1993. He ends up going and playing for the White Sox. So Jerry Reinsdorf, who owns the Bulls, owns the Chicago White Sox. We're just going to throw him in there, see what happens. I believe he only ends up making it to the Birmingham Barons in
Nobody has
AA.
ever showed up to more Birmingham games in their history than when Jordan wearing the 4-5 was out there.
Yeah, and I mean, he was the man, but he was not a great baseball player. He wasn't bad. He made it to AA, which is more than 99.999% of
But
the
how much
population.
of that is because he's Michael Jordan?
Yeah, the guy's just a natural athlete.
Yeah, that's true.
He loved baseball too, so it wasn't like he was just starting out. He ends up having enough, though. He's got to come back. He returns in 1995, and as we mentioned before, the 2 years that he's gone, Hakeem Olajuwon and the Rockets win both of those titles.
He kept getting fruit baskets from Hakeem being like, hey, thanks for trying baseball. Nope, fuck this.
It's just a gift card for batting lessons. Hakeem sends him. He's like, stay there. Jordan comes back with the most iconic 2-word phrase that's ever been uttered. I'm back. And he comes back wearing the 4-5, as you mentioned, before he switches back to 23 and basically an immediate three-peat again from 1996 to 1998. Just absolutely dominant.
Going back a little bit.
Huh?
Going back a little bit.
Yeah. In between then, we got to talk about probably the most influential basketball team of all time.
So during Jordan's run, between the 91-93 run, 1992 rolls around for the Olympic Games. Where did they take place? Barcelona. This was the first year that professional athletes would be taking part in basketball during the Olympics. Before, it used to be amateur, so basically like college players. Kind of the same way, if anyone has ever seen the movie Miracle, it was all college players that were playing for the Olympic hockey team. The year after that is when NHL players were allowed to come into play, basically forming all-star teams. So not only was this the first all-star team that was being formed to play in the Olympics, but it just so happens to be the greatest all-star team that's ever been assembled.
It's what happens when you lose in 88.
Was that one of the first times that they had not... It was their worst medal showing. It was a bronze medal, and it was the worst medal showing they had. And so the U.S. Olympic Committee or whoever it was just like, nope, we're not getting embarrassed again.
FIBA changed the rules.
Yep, we're going to go ahead and change the rules. Now, again, basketball has been an Olympic sport. Again, it's a worldwide sport that's been worldwide for decades at this point. So the lineup that's going to be formed for the NBA Dream Team is going to consist of David Robinson, Larry Bird, Clyde Drexler, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullin, Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson, Scottie Pippen, Christian Laettner, who was the one amateur.
Yep.
They were still including the token guy.
Played for Duke.
Yeah. And then, of course, Michael Jordan. And I don't know if anyone has watched the 30 for 30, the Dream Team.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking incredible. Yeah. Like the stories about like their practices and everything. The All-Star game is different. That's them playing, but not playing to where they're not trying to hurt themselves and everything like that. They're kind of doing it for show. They still want to win, but this was essentially just at each other, all of training leading up to the Olympics.
Well, we got to set the scene on the team because you have Magic Johnson overcoming AIDS to come back.
Mm-hmm.
You have Larry Bird overcoming his back injury that would ultimately end his career.
And this was toward the end of their was definitely the end of their career. So you had this kind of old guard that was still these players that people had grown up with that they're like, of course they got to have that representation on there. But then you had this entirely new guard of players that were coming in as well. And you would normally never see these guys get to play together in this capacity.
Yeah. And you have on the other side, Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
You have two of the most driven, arrogant, cocky dudes that could ever come together that are saying, it's our team now. We're gonna handle this league.
Mm-hmm.
You had a great run.
Yeah.
The 70s were awesome. The 80s were okay. You guys are old as shit now. I'm sorry. You gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they played and the way that they went at each other, the scores of these games.
So I'll just go ahead and run them down real quick. No game under 100 points. Average victory by 44 points that the USA Dream Team had over their opponents. So during the initial rounds of the Olympics, 116 to Angola's 48, 103 to Croatia's 70, 111 to Germany's 68, 127 to Brazil's 83. Quarterfinals were 122 to Spain's 81. Semifinals were 115 to Puerto Rico's 77. And then the finals were 126 to Lithuania's 76 and 117 to Croatia's 85 for the gold.
You want to hear how their first game started against Angola?
It was rough, wasn't it?
Barkley throws an elbow, hits an Angolese player, gets a technical foul, getting yelled at by the fans, spits on a kid. Causes an international incident that he has to apologize for that has worldwide ramifications.
Charles from fucking TNT spits on a kid.
Yep. Not a great start. But like you just listed off, nothing is close.
No. I feel like this had to be, watching this, of course, the world is watching this. And this had to be like that second matchup between the Globetrotters and the Lakers.
Yeah.
Where they were they're like, are these even the same? These guys even playing the same game?
Well, at the same time, they're having so much fun playing together, but that they're like, all right, they were up by 10. They went 10 minutes. They were up by 10. Our 10 minutes, we got to be up by 25. Mm-hmm. Like, you're just
There was internal competition within the same team.
Mm-hmm. I believe it was Monaco, the practice that they had in Monaco that's like world famous is supposedly.
The legendary behind closed doors that they said didn't they say there's video of it, but no one's ever seen it? Yeah,
they call it like the greatest game never played or something like that. Just absolutely amazing. So you have basically the biggest world PR stunt that you could pull. In 1992, giving the world everything that you could ever imagine as far as trying to make these.
It's basically the message being sent is, we know you all have basketball.
Yeah.
But we fucking do basketball.
Yeah, and it turns out that this team that we do basketball was 11 Hall of Famers and one Christian Laettner.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were just routine NBA players, except for Laettner. 1998. We see a lockout with a shortened 50-game season. This is just the Players Association flexing their muscles because they want more for their players. They want more just benefit for them.
Well, they're able to see how much the organization owners are making and everything.
Yeah, they're just making money hand over fist, and the players, they want some more of it. Previous to that, 1996... we get a pretty historic draft with Allen Iverson taken from Georgetown as the first pick, and we get Kobe Bryant taken the 13th pick to the Hornets because Kobe Bryant was a draft day trade for Vlade Divac to the Hornets so they could get Kobe.
Could have looked a lot different.
Yeah, a whole lot different. Allen Iverson brings this whole new edge to the league. We're not even talking about Kobe yet. Allen Iverson's wearing chains. He's got cornrows on the court. He's wearing sweatbands in places that no white guy has ever dared to wear sweatbands. He's just bringing a whole new hip-hop element into the NBA. And at the same time, you get him talking in press conferences about practice, about showing up late to practice.
Yeah.
The guy is just sort of an outlaw, but he's so damn good that they can't deny him. He changes the way that the league is looked at because his play is so hard and so rough and tumble.
Question.
Yeah, but at the same time, you're also looking at him, relatively unknown at that point in the NBA, sagging his pants.
Yeah.
Just this kind of gangster look that there's nothing wrong with, but it certainly fits a profile that David Stern may not have been too pumped about.
Yeah.
And then you have Kobe showing up into the league and just kind of pushing his... I forgot to mention the reason that the Lakers wanted to move Vlade so they could get Kobe was because they wanted to start freeing up cap space to try to go out and get Shaq.
Okay.
So at the same time, you start to see this kind of bond or this duo form just through the draft, hoping that Kobe is somebody good coming out of Lower Merion High School, a high school draft pick that may be great, may not end up awesome. His dad played professionally in Italy, so that he has a pedigree to be able to do this, and we're going to get Shaq. And they go on to just dominate this period in time. But also, relic from the ABA past, you have the Spurs finally asserting themselves as a big player in the NBA, standing up for the ABA.
And this was at a time when David Robinson was, the general.
The Admiral.
Yep. Oh, yeah, the Admiral. It was a rank.
He came from Navy.
Yeah, there you go.
A 6'10" guy on a ship and a submarine seems
exactly.
crazy.
But you have him as kind of the, the wily vet on the team, and then you get this new guy coming in.
Tim Duncan. Wake Forest from St. Croix. U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
Just the big fundamental. This guy knows how to play the game correctly, and you have David Robinson, who is a very militaristic man in his nature and his preparation and the way that he played. Just a great player. Between 99 and 2014, the Spurs would win 5 championships and the Lakers would win 5 championships. So we're talking about them just trading blows back and forth. And then you get maybe my favorite Pistons team of all time in 2004 winning the championship. So in between that, you have dominance coming from the West Coast. All these famous teams on the East Coast, the Knicks, everybody on that side, the Celtics, all these massive dynasties are just taking a back seat while San Antonio and LA just battle it out.
Yeah. Not even in the Midwest like it was with Chicago.
Yeah. It was, you see one half of the country so happy every single time, and everybody on the East Coast is like, well, we want to watch the finals too.
Yeah.
This should be fun for everybody. Part of the reason that I bring up the Pistons is to brag. The second part of the reason is November 19th, 2004, we have an incident that will go down in infamy as the Malice at the Palace in Auburn Hills in Detroit. Just a regular routine game between the reigning champion Detroit Pistons and the Indiana Pacers. And the two probably hottest heads in the league, maybe historically hottest heads behind Rodman, Rasheed Wallace and Ron Artest, who changed his name to Meta World Peace because he's such a mentally stable man.
Yes. A name change to statement is always a clear indicator.
Got into a little scuffle, got into a little fight. Both assess technicals. They're watching the video footage to try to figure out who started it, to figure out who gets kicked out. Artest is freaking out, throwing a conniption fit, goes and he lays on the scores table. Somebody from the stands decides to throw their beer down and just hit Artest as he's laying on the scores table. Artest, being the stable man that he is, gets up, pulls his jersey up, starts just screaming at the fans, trying to figure out who hit him with the water or with the beer. Ends up running up, I believe it was like the third or fourth row, and attacking a man who did not throw the drink because they were able to go back, and figure all this out. And chaos ensued as bench stars like Steven Jackson shuffle punch a fan on the sidelines. Jermaine O'Neal goes up into the stands, no relation to Shaq, goes up into the stands and starts ripping people out of their seats. Just one of the most incredible sights. If you go and look at anything from this episode, if it's the Malice in the Palace Brawl, I feel like we've done this justice. In the end, there were 9 players that were suspended. Our test was for the rest of the season, and I believe Sheed was probably pretty close to that, but he didn't go punch a fan, so he didn't get it as bad. 5 players were charged with assault. 5 fans were charged with assault.
Well, at least it's even.
Yeah, they ended up, it was like everybody settled because they couldn't figure out how to do it because they were obviously going to give the NBA players a slap on the wrist, but they wanted to punish the fans to deter this as much as possible. They settled on like a year of probation and community service for everybody. Like that was just where they were going to draw the line for everybody. So potentially the biggest, baddest brawl in NBA history, and everybody just gets a slap on the wrist with a, hey, probation. The 5 fans did get banned for life by the NBA, so at least that was good. October 17th, 2005, David Stern has done so much for the NBA. Maybe my second favorite Stern after Daniel, but he's kind of starting to lose it. He's kind of starting to lose his grip. He's just getting old. He's not really in touch with how the NBA needs to run, and decides that guys like Allen Iverson that are dressing the way that they are might be bad for business. Just a complete white guy take.
Goes full Christian high school football coach. It's game day, boys.
Yep.
Dress code.
We're going dress code. All players must dress in business or conservative attire while arriving and departing from games or during interviews. And it just took aim at this new culture that was sweeping over the league. And it's nothing but a change from the old guard to the new guard. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's an image that he doesn't want to portray. There's also certain factors in the NBA, like the Jailblazers in Portland, who may not have led the squeakiest, cleanest lifestyles outside of the NBA. Sheed, bad guy on the court. Damon Stoudemire getting caught with weed in the airport. Zach Randolph getting caught with weed in his Hummer. Like, just a lot of things going on in Portland.
People just getting caught with stuff in different places.
But we get this massive overreaction where he's like, we need to try to button this up and make this as clean as possible. We need to clean up our image.
Yeah. Suits.
But at the same time, the NBA, one of their biggest strengths now is they let their stars be stars and influencers. Mm-hmm. Like LeBron has millions and millions of followers on social media. They want these guys to be out there spreading the message that the NBA is. And David Stern's like, you're all dressing like suits.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. Luckily, it kind of starts to seem like maybe there's a different avenue for NBA players. Maybe if they're going to have to dress like this, they're going to get creative. They're going to go get $7,000 tailored suits in crazy colors and crazy designs, crushed velvet, just any sort of fabric that's going to pop.
If you're going to if you're going to narrow us down just to one lane, then we're going to figure out any and every option we have available in this.
Yeah.
To tell you to go fuck yourself.
Exactly. And that's what they did. They turned... Nowadays, there's like...
Is this when we enter the era of the huge colored suit and everything? Yeah.
The fun draft days where it looks like they're wearing their dad's suit up there, even though it's a 7-foot tall guy.
They just ran into Men's Warehouse and didn't take a measurement. They're just like, that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And after that, you kind of start to see these guys collaborating with fashion brands to come up with these just incredibly... still expressive displays just in the fanciest way possible is, yeah, exactly like you said, just a fuck you to David Stern. I believe it doesn't end up getting relaxed until 2020, which I think everything kind of got more relaxed in 2020. But it changed the way that these guys were showing up and kind of presenting themselves in such a positive light, but also they could still put their own spin on stuff. 2003, you get the seismic change that was LeBron James to the NBA. He's drafted number 1 by the hometown team, the Cavs. He came out of St. Vincent St. Mary's High School, and he had a following since he was like 14 years old. Mm-hmm. His high school games were nationally televised on ESPN. And this is back at a time when he's playing at a Catholic school but already has tattoos, so he has to literally like put Band-Aid style material over his arms so he's not showing his tattoos during the games.
Yeah.
Like, he was just a man among boys from such a young age. And he comes into the NBA playing for the hometown team. Cleveland has never historically been good. The last couple years they've turned it around and they're actually very good this year. but they needed a hero. And who better than the hometown boy to come
Yeah.
in and start to change things? And immediately he starts dragging them to the playoffs and doing everything he can. This part of it hurts me because I'm not a LeBron guy at all, but it's just too tough not to recognize. But he can't get over the hump in Cleveland, and he's supposed to be the next best thing to MJ. You got to figure out how to do this.
Well, what's the argument? The argument is always going to be, and again, it's generational. If you watched Michael Jordan play, I think here's the thing too. I think if you watched Michael Jordan play, you saw him play when you were younger.
Yeah.
And then when you saw LeBron play, you were more mature, so you knew that he was good, but it didn't have that awe factor because again, so many people are also good around him. So Jordan has the nostalgia, which is why, there's always the debate, who's better. But when it comes down to it, it's rings. And with, LeBron sitting in Cleveland and the comparisons are supposed to be, you were supposed to be the next Michael Jordan. What goes with Michael Jordan is those championships. And so there's that pressure to be like, if I'm going to ever stay in this conversation by the end of my career, I have to start winning championships. And I'm not able to do it here.
And ultimately, I mean, that's exactly what you laid out as the debate that will go on for the rest of time. I'm sure there will be another one that will get compared to him. Same thing, you can't compare Wilt to Jordan. You can't compare Jordan to LeBron. They all played different. They were all different styles, different eras. Everything was just different. The league was always changing and evolving.
It's personal preference. It's, Kobe, is it Steph? Is it,
And you have this guy that needs to, like you say, fulfill that prophecy to keep his name in Jordan's air. So he creates the decision. And personally, for me, a less than pro LeBron guy, the decision was one of the most annoying things in the world.
Yes, I agree with that.
I'm taking my talents to South Beach was just, I think, sort of a flop. And then they get there and they have this big parade where they talk about winning not one, not two, not three.
Yeah.
Just all of these promises that they make to where he goes down there and he gets paired with Dwayne Wade, who's another NBA Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, and Chris Bosh, who's probably on the same trajectory. Bosh came from Toronto. Again, people that don't know the NBA probably aren't going to get this, but these all-stars come from different teams all to converge into one place. And the reason that they had to do it was before that, the Cleveland Celtics, Boston Celtics put together what was known as kind of the modern age super team.
It was the big three.
Yeah, not true, because you had Jordan's Bulls had big threes. The Bad Boy Pistons had big threes. Houston had a big two, maybe a big three when they did it. But Ray Allen, a gigantic star, one of the greatest three-point shooters in history.
Jesus Shuttleworth.
Comes over. Yep, exactly. Great nickname. Paul Pierce, who you already have playing for the Celtics. And then you have Kevin Garnett coming from the Timberwolves, a guy who was transcendent. Again, came out of, I think it was Farut Academy, another just like a high school preparatory school, straight into the NBA. Was the best thing that ever happened to the Timberwolves for a very long time. They come together and LeBron can't beat him by himself.
Yeah.
So he goes down, he gets his two guys over the time that they're there.
End up winning 2 titles with the Heat between 2010, 2014, and then decides, okay, I've got a couple of them.
Yeah.
And now that I have a couple of them and maybe I feel a little bit more confident that I can do this, he's like, fuck it, I'll return to the Cavs, and ends up dragging Cleveland to its first title in 2016.
It didn't hurt that they had drafted Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
What better story is that than hometown boy makes good, bringing the Cavs their first title ever?
I do think the decision was very just, it was so self-absorbed that I don't know how else that was supposed to be taken.
Yeah.
But I understand the move. Had he not done the decision, no one would have been batting either. Been like, I get it. He's tried to beat Boston these last couple of years. He can't do it. Cleveland doesn't look like they're doing enough. He's going to form this team. People are, of course, going to hate it. I remember the jersey burnings in Cleveland and everything like that. But then after he does that in Miami, he's like, I do have unfinished business at home. And he goes, and it's not fucking easy for him to win that title either.
No, not at all. You're fighting against another super team that we'll talk about coming up. But LeBron had such longevity in the game that he's been able to do so many different things. And one of them, again, you can't mention greats without talking about Kareem, because Braun ends up breaking Kareem's all-time scoring record February 7th of 2023, and he's still going. He's the oldest active player in the NBA today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just his
And
longevity's...
and still relatively dominant.
And so much of this is because once the players got the power through the players union and they started to be able to make money, they started to realize that you can spend money to continue finely tuning your instrument. It becomes a year-round process. Instead of having to worry about going and getting a second job because you weren't making enough money, you could spend your second job was maintaining your body.
You're literally paying the type of people that were only previously reserved for fucking NASA from like a body work, and you're just able to bring in all of these tools that were never available to these players before and being like, I want to keep playing. Like, just tell me what I got to fucking do and make sure that you're taking care of my shit.
You're going to give me another $200 million contract if I come back for another 4 years? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I can make that happen.
Yeah.
I think I can stick around for another 200 mil. And he's a monster. And happily enough, we can go ahead and say that his finals record is only 4-6. Absolutely ludicrous that a guy's been to 10 NBA finals. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. But the LeBron hater in me has to say that he's still under 500.
4-6, yeah.
He's been to the mountain a lot. He's only been to the top 4 of the 10 times. Yeah. 2009, June 25th, second generation, father Del Curry, son Steph Curry is drafted 7th out of Davidson by the Warriors. Davidson,
not a
Ohio?
Powerhouse. Yeah, I don't know. All I remember of Davidson is the only reason they were relevant is because in the tournament, the NCAA tournament, Steph Curry was such a draw.
Yep. Yeah, he made everybody know that Davidson's mascot was the Bulldogs. Mm-hmm. He was transcendent. This whole time, I mean, there's a million other stars that we could talk about. These are just the guys that have to stand out because they're the guys that kind of change the game. Steph Curry goes to the Warriors, ends up winning 4 titles, still playing today. Very quickly, he became, not very quickly, but faster than anybody else, he became the all-time leader in three-pointers made. I mean, if there's anybody that's changed the game more than like Wilt extending out the key. Last night, as we were preparing for this episode, this will date this episode, Steph Curry hit his 4,000th three-pointer last night. As I was doing the boards, had the Warriors game on, just listening to it, and Steph hits 4,000. An insane effort.
How far is the arc from the hoop?
29 feet, I believe.
Again, they make it look so easy and so consistent, but to be able to take that ball, which is when you take the ball and you go put it in the basket, yeah, of course, if you swish it, it looks like it goes in there very easily.
2 balls can fit.
But only 2 can fit sideways in that. And here's the thing, anybody that has watched any, games with Steph Curry, he's not just walking up to the line. He'll go 5 feet behind the line. He'll go 6 feet behind. As soon as the guy backs off, he's going. Or he'll bounce back out behind the 3-point line and shoot it, falling away from it.
NBA is 23.9 at the center and then 22 in the corners. Whereas NCAA is 22. So you have about another 1.5 feet. Also, interestingly enough, one of the reasons that the NBA, that the United States dominates when it goes and plays in the Olympics and FIBA play is because their 3-point line is, again, another 1.5 feet shorter. It's the same thing. They're shooting college threes as NBA players.
Oh, okay.
And the goaltending rules are completely different. Once it touches the cylinder, you can just get up and grab it. So if you have a 40-inch vertical and you can out-jump everybody else, if that ball hits the rim and you can jump up and pull it off before it goes in, you're good. But yeah, getting back to this Chris is talking about, he was a guy who, there were revolutionaries in 3-point shooting. Dan Marley, Reggie Miller, all these guys that people that don't know basketball.
Ray Allen. Because that's who Steph Curry, he broke the record.
Yes.
He broke Ray Allen's record.
It was either him or Reggie. It was one of the two.
I think it might have been Reggie.
Yeah, Ray Allen might have played longer. But regardless, he bumped it back.
Yeah.
A 3-point line was just a suggestion. It was wherever he feels comfortable shooting, he'll just pull up and do it.
Yep.
And nowadays, that's how the game has changed. Before, it was such an interior game where everybody just tried to get it down low. Why Shaq was the most dominant player for a very long period of time.
Now he's fucking selling insurance for the general.
Yeah. The idea now is something that's so basic and easy to understand when the strategy is 3 is worth more than 2. Like, if you can do it, you might as well do it. And it just, he's a monster. He changed the way the NBA is played now. And not to say before, anytime you tuned in, you were probably going to see something that you'd never seen before. But after watching the NBA for this long, there's still times when he pulls up where I think there's no way that's going to happen. And it doesn't touch anything but the net.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing to watch. This idea of the international game has kind of been the number one changer lately because you have a literal global game. You have Yao Ming, who opened up China to the NBA in such a way that the NBA will talk about viewership. The numbers are staggering, but you also have these inroads through FIBA to Cameroon to bring Joel Embiid to play at Kansas.
You got Giannis. Like, you have a worldwide network of pulling in. You're not just saying, hey, we have the best players in the United States. You now have this reach that expands throughout the entire and has already a system set up. It's not like, hey, we're going in it. Like, you've already been playing this game for 100 years at this point. And you get to go out and find all these players, enough so for the fact that last 5 consecutive MVPs have been foreign players. You have Giannis from in 2019 and then 2020.
Born in Greece.
Yep, born in Greece. You have, is it Nikola Jokic?
Nikola Jokic.
2021, 2022 from Serbia, and then from Cameroon. Yeah, you have Joel Embiid in 2023.
And probably, again, it's either going to be this year, this is just a bet. It might be Jokic again, so you'll have another Serbian born outside, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's Canadian. So, I mean,
coming back around to Naismith. Yeah, there you go.
At least we're back in North America if it's Canadian, I guess. Basketball is the 3rd most popular sport in the world behind soccer and cricket. We're going to have to figure out how cricket works and why it's so popular.
Yeah.
But it seems like it would be interesting to do an episode on. The market share for basketball is 2.2 billion viewers. That's many people. And that's the United States is like 360 million. But when you factor in the influence that the NBA has had in China, that's been built up through Yao, that was built up through Kobe going over there and doing open runs and playing and going and stopping in the Philippines and all of those areas in Southeast Asia and growing the game. You have LeBron doing the same thing.
Do you remember the footage when the Dream Team showed up?
Yeah.
To the Olympics, how crazy it was?
It's just that worldwide draw that you can bring people to. 2023, 2024, the last season, the revenue was $11.34 billion. Which I believe the NFL is somewhere around 15 billion. But I mean, when you're talking $11.3 billion, that's pretty tough to be like, hey, that's not good enough.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, how many players are on an NBA team versus how many players are on a
15 compared to 54?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stark difference. But you also have the NBA being the first team in North America, I guess, in the United States to allow advertising on jerseys.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because they're paying for a spot on the jersey, just a random spot on the shoulder. But not only are you paying for that during a game, you're paying for that for every highlight that happens that gets shared across the web, social media, everywhere else.
Don't those go out on jerseys that are being sold too?
I haven't bought one in so long.
Oh, okay.
But I'm sure that you can get them that way.
Yeah,
like soccer jerseys.
It lets you know the time frame. It's almost like a timestamp for what season it was.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's maybe if they don't do it because they can change so much that
that's
it would mess
true.
up
And then they're
production.
like, no, we're not going to give you free advertising for years and years and years while someone's walking around with this.
You're not St. Louis. You're not getting anything in perpetuity.
Yeah, no shit. We learned from the stillness.
Yeah. So the growth that happens, that's $700 million more dollars that were made over the previous year. That's a lot of growth.
It's almost $750 million increase.
Yeah.
So that lets you know how quickly that number will climb.
Yeah, and the NBA is tailor-made for the social media age. Because you throw up a 15-second clip of an incredible dunk, a three-pointer that's insanely just from everywhere, and it's spread to billions of people that fast. So its reach is just fueled by itself, basically.
Yeah. All started by one man.
One Canadian that used a soccer ball.
One Canadian YMCA fitness instructor.
Imagine that. That feels like an SNL skit.
Yeah. Shut up. Shut up, James. This game will never take off.
That's what we forgot to mention. James was a very humble man. When the boys came back from winter break and they were talking about how popular it is, you got to put a name to it, right?
Yeah.
Got to put a name to it. One of the kids suggests, and this story comes from James, "Hey, Mr. Naismith, why don't we name it after you? Why don't we call it Naismith Ball?" And he goes, "Son, that's not right. I don't feel like that would do anything for the game with my name on it. We got a basket and we got a ball. Why don't we call it basketball?" Canadian.
Yeah. Oh, I don't feel like taking credit for this. I just want to grow the game, We'll just call it basketball, hey? Simple. But, yeah, everyone has those formative years in which the NBA has a snapshot. And I don't watch a ton of basketball and everything. I'll watch when the playoffs roll around usually. But I have a very specific era in my mind for a time when you couldn't help but sit in front of the TV. Because it was such, the national fever of, the early 90s Bulls going on their runs and everything. I remember there was one year that I think we took a family trip down to Salt Lake City to go Lagoon. And we did it at the same time that the Jazz and the Bulls were playing in the finals. Yeah. And all I remember is you could see where they were playing from the hotel and just looking out the window and being like, oh my, they're literally just playing right there with no way to go see it.
Yeah. Delta Center's close. It wasn't that close, and financially, I'm sure it wasn't.
It wasn't in the cards.
No.
All right, man, this was fun. You got anything else?
No. Great episode.
Fun. Hope you guys learned something. If not, it was still pretty fucking entertaining.
Yeah, it had to be.
And we'll catch you on the next one.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit them with it.
Our Instagram is Historically High Pod, Historically High POD, and we are on Twitter at Historically High. That's Historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those two, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.